Check, check. Can y'all hear it? I put my teeth in for y'all so you can understand, sorta, what the fuck I'm reading. Okay. Hopefully, I'm gonna get through the book, but it's kind of a big book. This might be a two-parter, but I'm gonna try my damnedest to get through this. I got drinks lined up. Everybody get your robes on, get snuggled up, get your blankies, get your hot cocoa, get your hot tea, get whatever you need to get comfy, and we'll get started here in about 5 minutes and wait for people to come in, and we're going to read Benjy and the Belsnickle. Christmas tradition of story time. Let's keep it alive. Let's keep it alive. How's everybody doing? Oh, I'm back. Can y'all hear the Christmas tunes in the back? Hey, Northern Girl. Hey, Mr. Susher. Hello, Randy Jones. Hello, Kelly Doyle. Oh, we'll get started here in about 5 minutes. I'm going to get everybody a chance to go get whatever you got to get comfy, get snuggled up. Get your blankets, get your robes, get your hot chocolate, and we're going to read a Christmas story. Traditional Pennsylvania Dutch Belsnickle. I got more stuff I'm going to be bringing for y'all in the coming weeks. Referring to the Belsnickle, why is she texting me when she know I'm fucking live? Hold up. She's supposed to be in here. Doing live. You coming? Doing that. Let me turn my notifications off. I don't know why I have over 60,000 followers. And I don't hardly ever get any traffic on my lives. What is up with that? Anybody know? Is that like a TikTok shadow banning me thing or some shit? Can y'all hear the music? Is it too loud? Can you hear it at all? Hey, Jodez, 627, good evening. I'm going to try and get through the book. I'm going to try. It's a big book. I'm slightly leaning on the dyslexic scale a little bit, so reading out loud, live reading is not one of my wonderful skill points, but I'm going to do my best. I'm not audible. I'll do the best I can do for y'all. Hopefully you'll enjoy a little Christmas story tonight. Your name is actually Jody. Okay. You can barely hear it? Okay, well, that's the way I want it. I want it barely audible, but audible. You know what I mean? So it's not distracting, but, you know, background ambiance or what the fuck ever. Okay. I got my pillow back here. I'm going to try and get comfy. I even got the green light on for Christmassy shit. So if y'all did not see the video where I unboxed this book, this was sent to me by the curator of the Landis Valley Museum in Pennsylvania, which is a museum that focuses on and preserves Pennsylvania Dutch culture, traditions, language, artwork, you know, all that shit. But she sent me this book. This is the card that came with it. Her internet's all wonky. Well, I guess she's going to try and come in. This is Benjy and the Belsnickle by Bonnie Swinehart. And it's actually signed by the author, which I thought was really fucking cool. Okay. So let's just jump into it. This is a mind-bending 183 fucking pages, y'all. When I agreed to do this live before I got the book, I didn't know the book was this big. I'm going to try and get through this in one evening. Okay, let's see. So we're starting on chapter 1, which is titled The Pig's Tail and the Prankster. It starts in the Pennsylvania Dutch town of Landisburg in September of 1934. This is going to be so good to watch. Benjy Clemens crept along the outside wall of the red brick schoolhouse and poked his head around the back corner. He clamped his hand tightly over his mouth. A volcano of laughter bubbled up inside him at the sight of Miss Nettie, the schoolmarm, striding across the schoolyard. Sure, she looked funny with that squiggly pink pig's tail dangling down from the back of her long black sweater. Benjy smiled. The school year was getting started, and already he'd managed to pull a prank on Miss Nettie. He had sneaked into her coat closet early in the morning before the start of school. When Miss Nettie wasn't watching, he pinned a pig's tail right to the back of her sweater, then dashed out of the closet. He hadn't pulled a trick better than that one in all his 11 years. Minutes later, Miss Nettie emerged from the schoolhouse and started her daily walk around the schoolyard. Greeting the children with the pleasant good morning, giggles and chuckles filled the schoolyard's playground. A few fingers pointed to Miss Nettie's way. She tried to look over her shoulder, turning this way and that. Some of the children were playing Anthe One Over. I never heard of that game. Their favorite game involving two teams. One team member would throw a ball over the woodshed where a student on the other team would catch it. The one who caught the ball would then try to tag someone on the first team. All too soon, Miss Nettie climbed the porch steps and rang the bell, starting the school day for the 23 students in grades 1 through 6. Hearing the bell, the children scurried up the steps into the classroom. Benjy joined the tail end of the group and thought about the summer that he had just passed. I miss playing with my friends, but I am glad I get to see them in church. Hey, Benjy, Frankie said. Guess what I saw this summer? What? We went to visit Aunt Louise for a whole week in the city, and I saw a whole bunch of cars. Even got to see a fancy 1933 Packard town car. Oh boy, Benjy said. I wish I could have seen it. We don't see many cars around here, do we? I'd be happy with just a bicycle. Pop said if I can earn the money, I can get my very own bicycle. Reaching the door, Frankie said, we can talk some more at recess. See you then, said Benjy. Inside the front of the classroom stood Miss Nettie's big desk. A large chalkboard lined the wall, and in one corner hung the American flag that they saluted every morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the Lord's Prayer and a short Bible reading. Beside the flag stood an old black upright piano where Miss Nettie played music for them. In the middle of the room sat a wood stove, the only source of heat in the cold months. When the days turned frigid, the boys took turns carrying wood from the woodshed so everyone could huddle around the stove while Miss Nettie taught her lessons. The children rushed into the cloakroom, hung their coats and jackets on the hooks, and lined their metal lunchboxes and pails on the shelf above. Of course, Miss Nettie had her own closet. No one dared open that door. No one else, anyway. Benjy watched Miss Nettie remove her sweater and hang it in the closet. She took no notice of the pig's tail he had hung on it. Once again, Benjy felt smug, as though he hadn't been caught. Miss Nettie began the day with the Pledge of Allegiance and the morning prayer session. Then she began to assign the day's lessons. Quiet, please. Grade 1. Practice the alphabet. Grades 2 through 5, practice writing your spelling words. Grade 6, begin math on page 24. Oh no, arithmetic again? Benjy mumbled under his breath. It's only day 1, and I'm already tired of multiplication and division. Bored out of his mind, Benjy began daydreaming about pirate ships. The pot-bellied wood stove in the middle of the room became an enemy pirate vessel, heading towards his ship, ready for attack. Shiver me timbers! Those seafaring scoundrels won't get me treasure! Benjamin! Benjy jumped out of his seat. Everyone turned and looked at him. Oh, shucks, I got caught daydreaming again. Benjy swallowed, but the lump in his throat stayed. Yes, Miss Nettie? I asked if you could give us the answer to number 7. No, Miss Nettie. She crossed her arms over her chest. Your constant daydreaming has got to stop. You are here to learn. Come to the front of the class and take a seat on the stool in the corner. Benjy got up and dragged his feet, taking much more time than needed to reach the stool. Miss Nettie placed the pointed paper hat marked with a capital D on his head. The D stood for dunce. The dunce hat? Just daydreaming? Miss Nettie must have also seen me in her closet. Roars of laughter echoed in Benjy's ears. He remembered his own hoots and howls earlier that morning. Suddenly his prank didn't seem quite so funny. His cheeks burned, and he knew from experience that his fair freckled skin was turning bright red. His dunce hat is feeling hotter and hotter. Benjy adjusted the hat on his head, but refused to swipe the beads of sweat pouring from his forehead. The day dragged on for Benjy as he watched the clock's hands move as slow as a turtle in the mud. Finally, Miss Nettie cast Benjy one last stern look, and just before she rang the bell, Benjy, you may remove the hat and place it on the stool. Take a seat at your desk, but remain here after the school bell. Hearing the bell, the children spilled out of the door like prisoners released from freedom. Silence filled the room except for the clicking of Miss Nettie's shoes as she returned to her desk. With a glance his way, she said, "Come here, please." He squirmed out of his seat and shuffled to her desk. "Benjamin, it is only Monday, and I can't for the life of me figure out why you waste so much time daydreaming and pulling pranks when you should be here to learn." Benjy shook his head. "I don't know, Miss Nettie. Someday, young man, your behavior is bound to catch up with you. With Christmas only a few months away, I'd beware of a visit from the Belsnickle if I were you." An image flew through Benjy's mind of a creature, all smothered in ashes, leering at him. He'd heard tales of the Belsnickle all his life. Wearing a funny hat with bells, quills, the Belsnickle terrorized children who misbehaved. Goosebumps ran down his arms. All the kids around here knew about the Belsnickle and his Christmas visits. Benjy even heard that the Belsnickle carried a small horsewhip in one hand. With thoughts of his prank fresh in his mind, shivers of fear ran down his spine. Miss Nettie handed Benjy a sealed note. "Here, deliver this to your parents. I'll be by later to discuss it with them." Benjy's hand quivered as he grabbed the note. "Miss Nettie, may I go now?" She waved her hand towards the door, and Benjy turned and ran. He grabbed his jacket and lunch pail and made a dash towards the door, dodging desks along the way. Benjy stood outside in the schoolyard. Did she know it was me who pulled the prank? He kicked the dirt, muttering, "It's hard to fool Miss Nettie. Boy, I'm going to get it. Ma and Pa sure ain't going to like this. Dear God, I know Ma and Pop are going to be plenty mad. I've lost count of the times Miss Nettie sent me home with a note, but please don't let me get a whooping." Benjy looked at the note and was tempted to open it. Instead, he stuffed it in his pocket and headed for the shortcut through the Sherwood Forest. Of course, it wasn't really Sherwood Forest, but after he read a story of Robin Hood, he started pretending to be Robin's merry men, escaping that evil sheriff of Nottingham rather than plain old Benjy. As he walked, he thought about Miss Nettie's silly remark about the Belsnickle and ducked just in time to avoid a brush with a low maple branch. Who does she think she is, trying to scare me with that Belsnickle stuff anyway? Benjy picked up a stick and snapped it in two. Everyone knows that old folklore stuff. He ain't gonna get me. Why, Gits, Old Robert shouted in the Pennsylvania Dutch dialect. "Good day to you, Benjy." Benjy had been so caught up in his thoughts about the Belsnickle that he didn't realize that he was already at his favorite fishing hole, a small pond just off the path near his family's farm. "How are you today, Benjy?" "I ain't doing that good." With a heavy heart. "Catching anything?" Sure enough, old Albert, a whiskey man, sat along the pond's small bank, holding up his stringer of 5 largemouth bass. "He got me an extra pole over there. You're welcome to join me." Benjy hesitated, his mind wandering and scheming. He tapped the note in his pocket. How would Miss Nettie know if he stopped off for a little fishing? Besides, he'd have to face Ma and Pa soon enough. No doubt I won't be doing any more fishing for a while after Pop's done reading this note. Benjy dropped his lunch pail and grabbed the extra pole that lay nearby. "I'll catch me a big one," Benjy said, as he plopped down. Old Albert began jabbing a brown wriggly worm onto his hook. Plunk, the line hit the water. Benjy and old Albert waited a long time in silence. "Just my luck. It looks like the fish quit biting for the day." "They're not even jumping. The water is so still," said Benjy. Getting a lot out of learning at that there at your school of yours, huh?" old Albert asked. "Getting in trouble is more like it," Benjy said, as he pulled in his line. His thoughts drifted to that silly dunce hat. "Why do you suppose I have so much trouble behaving?" "Hard to say, but you at least think about trying to do right. Deep down, you're a good lad." "You really think so, old Albert? Because sometimes I really wonder." "I sure do." Old Albert nudged Benjy as he gave him a big smile. "But you better take care or you'll get a visit from the Belsnickle come Christmas." Shudders raced down Benjy's spine again. Why'd he have to say that? That makes 2 warnings about the Belsnickle in one day. "Well, we best be getting home now." Old Albert struggled to his feet. "This sitting makes my bones stiffen up. I'm getting to be an old man, Benjy." "You ain't old. You got a ton of fishing left in you. You're my best friend and fishing pal." Benjy stood and handed old Albert his pole. "Well, see you later. So long, Benjy. I'll see you next time." Heading for his family's farm, Benjy soon rounded the last bend. Putting one foot in front of the other, he was drawn to the neighbors' rows and rows of apple trees. Big red apples hung from the trees. He snatched one off a low limb and sank his teeth into it as he walked up a small hill towards his house. At the crest of the hill, Benjy gazed down at his white clapboard house and weather-beaten barn. Pop got himself a mighty fine farm. He cupped his hand over his brows, shading his eyes against the sun's late afternoon glare. Oh no! Benjy's heart jumped out of his chest. He couldn't believe his eyes. Even at such a distance, he recognized that short, plump, unmistakable figure. Miss Nettie is just leaving the house. Looks like I'm in big trouble now. Chapter 2. Benjy waited until Miss Nettie's wagon left his house before he sneaked across the front yard to avoid Ma. She stretched her short frame to reach the clothesline, taking down ragged blue overalls, white handkerchiefs, pink and blue flowered aprons, and checkered flannel shirts. He opened the front door and slipped inside the house. The aroma of roasted chicken smacked his nose. Benjy's mouth watered and his stomach grumbled. He placed Miss Nettie's note on the table beside Ma's flowers. But before Benjy turned to sneak back outside, he paused. A creepy feeling crawled up his back. Is somebody standing behind me, watching me? Could it be the Belsnickle checking up on me? Benjy slowly turned and gasped. His father stood in the doorway, his head almost touching the top of the doorframe. His glare fixed on Benjy and made Benjy's insides turn to mush. His father stomped across the room and thumped his fist on the table next to Ma's vase of flowers. Benny jerked back and his eyes locked on his father's. "Benjamin James!" By his father's tone, Benjy knew he was in big trouble. "I didn't see you there." Benjy shifted from one foot to the other, waiting for Pop's angry words. "I suppose you want a few words with me. Go do your chores while Ma finishes supper. We'll talk later." Pop's gruff voice alarmed Benjy even more. "Yes, sir." Halfway to the chicken coop, Benjy felt something nip at his feet. "Hey there, Mutt." Benjy rubbed his long-haired Springer Spaniel gently behind the ears. "Do you want to help feed the chickens?" The mutt had been nothing more than a bag of bones when he appeared at their doorstep 2 years ago in the middle of a late-night downpour. Benjy's thoughts wandered back to the night when he first laid eyes on his dog, shivering and snuggling as tight as he could against the door, trying to get out of the rain. He looked like a drowned rat with all his fur plastered against his body. Pop checked the whole valley looking for his owner, but nobody claimed him. Ma and Pop let Benjy keep him. Benjy hugged Mutt and patted his head. "You're my best friend." Mutt wagged his tail and licked Benjy's face. Mutt always seemed to understand Benjy's problems. "Mutt," Benjy said, "what do you think? Was it just a daydreaming that got Miss Nettie so riled up, or did she figure out who put that pig's tail on her sweater?" At the memory of the pig's tail waggling back and forth at her backside once again, Benjy stifled a laugh. The small wooden gate leading into the shed-sized chicken coop screeched loudly as Benjy pulled it open. He entered the chicken coop, filled the bucket with feed, and then scattered handfuls around the coop's floor. The Rhode Island Reds and White Plymouth Rock chickens scrambled out squawking and pecking fiercely at the fallen bits of corn. "There are some hungry chickens today," Benjy said to Mutt. "Won't be nothing left of that corn for the squirrels to gather up." Benjy rehooked the gate and sauntered over to the water pump. Up and down the pump the handle went until the steady stream of water gushed out. He filled 2 buckets and lugged them over to the water trough where the clover and buckwheat on the family's team of black and brown horses neighed their greeting. After several trips to the trough and back, he pumped one last bucket and plopped it on the ground, sloshing water over the rim. "Here you go, Mutt, drink up," he says. "You must be mighty thirsty." Benjy was feeling thirsty too after all these chores. He pumped the handle again and stuck his head under the spigot, slurping the running water. It was September, and the garden needed care. Benjy headed to the vegetable patch where he bent down to weed the turnips, broccoli, beets, cabbage, and cauliflower. Bam! Benjy jumped with a sudden sound of a slamming door. "Benjy, come on now, supper's on," Ma yelled in a not-too-friendly tone. "Be right there," Benjy called back. "Well, Mutt, it sounds like I'm about to get more than just a belly full of food. A tongue lashing is sure to happen, and I ain't got no defense." He headed straight for the kitchen sink and grabbed the bar of soap. With his head down, he concentrated harder than needed on washing his hands. Rubbed red from the scrubbing, he finally reached for the towel to dry them. Benjy slipped into his place at the table and bowed his head as Pop said grace. Silently, Benjy added a wishful prayer of his own. "Dear God, please help me do better in school, especially during arithmetic class." Ma passed around the roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and the golden sweet corn. Although it was his all-time favorite meal, Benjy found himself having trouble swallowing. He waited anxiously for Pop to mention the note. Between mouthfuls, he studied Pop's expression, hoping to read his thoughts. Benjy grimaced. Maybe Ma made his favorite food as his last meal. The air seemed to get thicker and thicker, like a cloud of smoke threatening to suffocate him. He squirmed back and forth in his seat, then he slouched. "May I be excused, please?" "Not yet, young man," Pop pushed back. He pushed his plate and opened the note, and laid it out on the table. Benjy sat up straight and swallowed hard to loosen the knot forming in his throat. Miss Nettie's words leapt out to Benjy's face. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Clemens, your son Benjamin is a bright student, lacking in self-discipline. He is prone to childish pranks that continually undermine his education. What a shame a bright boy like Benjamin does not live up to his God-given potential. Sincerely, Miss Nettie Wagner. Miss Nettie stopped by on her way home from school this afternoon. Pop stared down at Benjy, his brows arched up until they almost touched. I guess she wanted to be sure I gave you and Ma the note. I think this belongs to you, Pop said, dangling a curly pink pig's tail right in Benjy's face. Benjy's eyes popped. She told us what happened before school this morning. What do you have to say for yourself? Not much to say, sir. It was just a little joke. I didn't mean no harm. I don't believe Miss Nettie appreciated your joke. In fact, she seems to think you'd be doing a whole lot better in school if you got over this ornery behavior of yours and started concentrating on your schoolwork rather than scheming up new pranks and daydreaming in class. Yes, sir, I reckon she's right. I gave it some thought. I'm adding another chore to your list. I'm behind this year's wood chopping and we'll need to get plenty for this winter. You're old enough now and have watched me do it many times, so it'll be your job to split and stack the wood in the shed. You can start tomorrow, right after school, and chop every day until you're done. Yes, sir, Benjy gulped in his father's stern expression. Pop stood up and plodded to the door. Then he paused. And there'll be no more pranks and no more fishing until further notice. I know you can do better, Benjy. I'll be praying for you to improve your behavior. He looked at Benjy, then closed the door on his way out. Make sure you read your Bible, then off to bed with you. Ma pursed her lips in a sure sign of displeasure. Phew! Benjy let out a big sigh and hightailed it to the steps of his own room. I could have fared a whole lot worse. At least I didn't get a whooping. Once in his room, Benjy changed his clothes for bed. Mutt stared at him with his big brown eyes. Come here, Mutt. Benjy patted on the quilt. What you thinking? Benjy patted the quilt again, but instead of jumping on the bed, Mutt faced the window and gave a low guttural growl, making Benjy grab his knees and curl up. What is it, boy? What's wrong? Benjy slinked out of bed and crept to the window and peeked into the darkness. What are those strange shadows out by the walnut tree? Is the Belsnickle with his shifty eyes spying on me? Benjy squinted to focus. Ah, that old trunk tree just looks like a body. The branches like arms and the limbs like long spindly fingers. He kind of chuckled nervously. I'm just imagining things. Ain't nothing out there but the wind. I hope. Still, Benjy turned, and with one leap he jumped into his bed. Mutt and Benjy burrowed their heads under the covers. He closed his eyes and whispered, Dear God, just in case Miss Nettie and old Albert are right about the Belsnickle stuff, I reckon I could use a heap of help behaving. Chapter 3. After school on Tuesday, Benjy dug the tips of his shoes into the dirt near the woodshed, drawing zigzagged ridges in the dust. Gee whiz, look at all this wood. Sure enough, Pop had kept his word. Benjy gawked at the firewood scattered haphazardly beside the woodshed. He propped his lunch pail next to the shed and grabbed the axe. He'd much rather be holding a fishing pole, but he knew his father well enough not to even think of disobeying. He might as well get his punishment over with. He placed a piece of wood on top of a tree stump and took a big swing of the axe. Crack! The axe split the firewood in two. As he swung the axe, he remembered Miss Nettie's threat about the Belsnickle's visit. He imagined himself warding off the frightening creature with each swing of the axe. His pile of logs turned into smaller pieces. Clenching a gnawed stick in his teeth, Mutt approached Benjy and pranced around his feet, begging him to join in a game. Benjy threw the stick and Mutt dashed after it. Mutt hurried to retrieve it and bring it back to Benjy's feet. "Sorry, Mutt. I wish I could, but there's no time for playing more catch today." Benjy rubbed the dog under his chin. Mutt stared at Benjy, then yelped like an old hound dog chasing a rabbit. "No point in whining, boy. Like it or not, I got a heap of work to do, and Pop's counting on me to get this job done." Benjy continued to chop away at the stack of wood, piling the split pieces into neat stacks by the woodshed. Meanwhile, Mutt lay down nearby and barked every time Benjy swung the axe. "Ouch! I'm not used to chopping wood." Benjy rubbed the blisters that had popped up on his hands. "Now, I got a ton of work ahead of me, and my hands will be downright raw until some calluses form." With sore hands, he quickly fed the chickens and watered the horses. "Benjy, come on, wash up now. Supper's on." The sound of Ma's voice sent ripples of relief through Benjy's aching body. Benjy hurried into the house, washed his hands, and sat down at the table. He winced in pain as his fork slid over his open blisters. He stifled a yawn as fatigue washed over him. Tired from his wood chopping, he barely muttered a word during supper that night. He had a notion to ask Pop how long he'd have to be chopping and stacking wood, but pride stood in his way. "I'll take my punishment like a man and hold my tongue to keep it from wagging." "May I be excused, Pop? I'm mighty tired tonight. I'd really like to just go to bed." "You're excused," Pop said. As Benjy headed upstairs, every muscle and bone in his body ached. "A whooping would have stung my hide, but maybe it would have been better than all this chopping. And I just got started." He flopped down onto his mattress and let out a breath. "Dear God, my bed never felt so good. Please give me the strength to keep up the wood chopping." In a snap, his eyes closed and sleep overtook his tired body. Every day for 3 days, Benjy arrived home from school, only to find Pop had another stack of wood waiting for him. Then on Friday, he noticed something different. He ran towards the woodshed, surprised he saw no more logs waiting to be split and stacked. Glory be! Pop finally got his fill! Hearing Benjy shout from the barn, Pop came to see what was happening. "Am I done with chopping, Pop?" "Surely you have enough wood for the winter. Probably enough for 2 winters." "Won't be near enough wood for this winter, but you worked off your punishment, and I'm proud of the way you stuck to it." If Pop was proud, maybe he would let Benjy go fishing today. He fed the chickens, watered the horses, and checked the garden. With no new weeds to pull, he then went back to the barn to search for Pop. He found him busy cleaning the horse stalls. Mutt laid nearby on his bed of straw, watching Benjy intently. Benjy hesitated and tempted to offer his father some help, but the fishing hole was calling his name. "Pop, if you won't be needing me, could I go catch us a batch of fish?" Pop chuckled. "You've done a fine job. You stuck to splitting and stacking the wood real good. Go on and have yourself some fun, but be home by supper time." "Thanks, Pop." And with a skip in his step, Benjy grabbed his pole and worm box. Mutt's ears perked up, and he waited for Benjy's next words. "Come on, you lazy bag of bones, we're going fishing." Benjy and Mutt raced to the Sherwood forest, to the fishing hole. Sure enough, there sat old Albert, looking like he had plopped right down in the middle of a bristly. Yellow cattails were only at the top of his saggy brown hat, stuck out amongst the reeds. "Mind if I join you?" Benjy asked. He reached for the log old Albert sat on. "I brought us some worms." "Be right glad for the company," old Albert said as he hooked a fish. Benjy baited his hook and then sat down to do some serious fishing. Hungry, the fish bit on his line, and soon Benjy had a stringer full of plump silvery bass and bright yellow sunfish. "It's my lucky day," he whispered to old Albert, so as not to scare off the fish. But the bright yellow sunfish couldn't outshine the guilt that rose up in Benjy. He hadn't exactly been an angel at school this week. Shucks, Miss Nettie stood him in the corner twice this week. At least she hadn't made him wear that funny-looking dunce hat again. "Something troubling you, son?" old Albert asked. "I pulled Lucy Jones's pigtails yesterday. She tattled to Miss Nettie, and I got stood in the corner." Old Albert nodded. "Sounds like trouble." "Today I snuck up to the blackboard and erased Miss Nettie's arithmetic assignments. I don't know why I do these things. Except Lucy and Miss Nettie were girls, and that seemed to be reason enough. All the giggling and gossiping girls seemed to enjoy so much. Well, it sure worked on Benjy's nerves. That is, until the day Benjy met Sarah Perkins with her long reddish blonde hair and big blue eyes. "Attention, boys and girls," Miss Nettie said. "I'd like all of you to welcome Sarah to our school. Her family just moved from the next county over, and she will be in the 6th grade." Benjy couldn't stop staring at the new girl. "Sarah's just about the prettiest thing I ever laid eyes on." "Stand up and introduce yourselves," Miss Nettie said. Heeding her order, the children bounced out of their seats like rubber balls, quickly reciting their names. Then Benjy's turn came around. Panic set in when he tried to stand. His foot caught on the chair rung, and he just about toppled over. Just in time, he regained his balance. "Benjamin, everyone is waiting," Miss Nettie said. Benjy opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out but a horrible high-pitched squeal that echoed through the room. Red-faced, he tried again. He managed to speak his name in a deep, hoarse voice and quickly took his seat. He imagined an invisible tunnel under his desk and wished he could crawl away as fast as his legs would take him. "Sarah probably thinks I'm the biggest oaf in Landisburg." Embarrassed beyond words, he couldn't look at Sarah the rest of the day. He painfully counted the minutes until that school bell rang. What a difference does it make what Sarah thinks? "She's just another girl, isn't she?" He mumbled as he walked home alone. But for some reason, his heart wouldn't quit thumping in his chest, because she wasn't just any girl. No, sir, there was something special about Sarah. "I just can't figure it out, old Albert," Benjy said that same day at the fishing hole. "Something must have kidnapped my voice during the night. One minute I sounded like an old screech owl perched in Sherwood Forest, and the next minute I croaked like one of those bullfrogs out here at the fishing hole." "What you got is a case of growing pains," old Albert said. "It happens to everyone around your age." "Is that anything like growing out of your shoes?" "Not exactly." "Well, I sure hope it stops soon. Miss Nettie keeps sticking me in the corner because I'm so full of what she calls childish pranks. She even warned me about a visit from that scary old Belsnickle, just like you did. He's probably not even really going to come. Not that I believe in that stuff. Let me tell you, boy, the Belsnickle will find you if he wants to. Why, I heard of a time when he made a visit to a young lad over in Cooperstown. Scared the britches right off that kid." Benjy gulped. "You mean the Belsnickle really hunted that kid down? He must be mighty mean if he scared the kid so bad his pants flew off." Old Albert scratched his head. "You be careful, son. The Belsnickle starts making his rounds in late December and continues until Christmas Eve." Old Albert shrugged his shoulders. "It's anyone's guess who he is, but one thing's for sure. There is a Belsnickle." Benjy trembled. "What does the Belsnickle look like?" "He's dressed in all black, and he carries a whip and wears little glocks." "What's a glock?" "It's a bell. A bunch of jingle bells are rolled up into the edge of the Belsnickle's hat. You'll know the sound when you come to hear it, especially in the middle of the night. It sounds mighty eerie." Suddenly, Benjy didn't feel like fishing anymore. He still had a hard time believing this ugly creature could find him, but if old Albert said the Belsnickle could hunt him down, then he had better think about it twice. Let me take a break for a drink. Hold on. But if old Albert said the Belsnickle could hunt him down, then he'd better think about it twice. I gotta go, Benjy said. It's getting late. I ain't never been afraid of these woods before, but I ain't sticking around here any longer. It feels downright spooky today with all the strange shapes and shadows. Benjy ran, slipping and stumbling his way through the forest fallen branches and old tree stumps. All the while his eyes were glued for any movement, and his ears were attuned for any sounds. I ain't letting that Belsnickle creep up on me. No, sir, he'll have to catch me first, and I'm a mighty fast runner. A noise startled Benjy from behind, and his jittery nerves, like pricks of needles, urged him to run even faster. Chapter 4. I know I shouldn't do it. I know I shouldn't do it, Benjy lectured himself while walking in circles beneath the schoolhouse window before school started that day. Smack! Benjy slapped his baseball back and forth from his hand to his mitt. It was mid-October, about 6 weeks since Miss Nettie had scolded him for the prank with the pig's tail, and Pop had made him chop that stack of big pile of wood as a punishment for that prank. Oh, I remember those blisters, he moaned. Then he stared at his calloused hands, yet he couldn't seem to help himself. A feeling of exhilaration washed over him at the very thought of his latest prank. The mild morning promised to unfold into an unusually warm day. A great day better spent outdoors playing baseball than cooped up inside that old schoolhouse. Benjy dropped his mitt and ball and grabbed his bat. Swish! He swung the bat, taking a practice shot. Yes, sir, I'm ready to run the bases. Benjy had come up with a new plot, but he would need just a little help from his pals for this one. He paced, waiting for Daniel, Joshua, and Frankie to arrive before the school day started. As soon as they got to the schoolhouse, he gathered them into a huddle on the school's ball field to explain his latest plan. During the last recess of the day, Miss Nettie was always distracted while playing jump rope with the girls. Frankie shook his head. You're crazy, Benjy. This ain't never gonna work. Sure it will if we time it right, said Benjy. Joshua stared at one of the school windows. I'm not the one going inside. Me neither, Daniel said. I'll go inside, Benjy said. All you have to do is help. But what if she catches us? Frankie asked. She'll be so mad she might make us wear the dunce hat or make us stay extra late on another day. Benjy shrugged. Who cares? There won't be many nice days left before winter sets in. Benjy yearned to hit a home run and show off his skill. It's a whole lot better than sitting in the classroom for another 2 hours while the sun's still shining. We just better get her to dismiss us early today. Benjy met each of his friends' eyes in turn. Everyone who's in on the prank, put your hand in the middle and shake on it. The 4 hands gripped tightly, including Benjy's. No squealing, Benjy said, and they all promised. No squealing. Benjy tapped his pencil against his desktop through Miss Nettie's lessons. His eyes kept shifting to the clock, where time seemed to stand still. He thought the last recess of the day would never come. Finally, Miss Nettie dismissed him. Just as Benjy had predicted, Miss Nettie hurried along with the girls to open part of the playground and turn one end of the jump rope as the girls took turns skipping and chanting. Teddy bear, turn around. Teddy bear, touch the ground. Teddy bear, go upstairs. Teddy bear, say your prayers. Teddy bear, turn out the light. Teddy bear, say good night. With Frankie as the lookout, the other boys gathered beneath the high, partially open window. Daniel and Joshua looped their hands together. "On the count of 3, we'll give you a boost," Daniel said. 1, 2, 3. The boys boosted Benjy up. But scrambling and stretching his arms as far as he could, Benjy still fell short of the windowsill. "Ouch," Benjy muttered. Then he scratched his chin on the bricks as his way back down. "Benjy, grab onto the windowsill," Daniel said. "Give it more power and push harder." "Don't you think I tried?" Benjy growled, rubbing his chin. He quickly wiped away a tiny bit of blood. "Shh," Frankie warned. The boys pushed and pushed until Benjy shimmied through the open window. "Hand me the board," Benjy whispered. He stretched as far as he could without falling out of the window and managed to grasp the board with the tips of his fingers. He tiptoed to the door and jammed the board under the door latch. He pushed a few school desks around the board for extra measure. "She ain't gonna get back in here," he schemed. "No way. She'll have to dismiss us early. All her lesson plans will be stuck inside." Benjy chuckled and headed for the window. When he reached the window, he stuck his head out, waved and whispered, "Howdy, boys, it's all done." "Get out of there, Benjy," Joshua said. "Now!" Benjy took a big leap out of the window. Just as he landed, he looked up and saw Sarah with her eyes as big as saucers. "Oh no," Benjy whispered. "Sarah's surely going to have a bad opinion of me now. How am I ever going to get her to like me?" Sarah scowled and turned away and hurried back to the other girls. "Sarah, please don't squeal. I didn't mean anyone no harm." No sooner did they make their escape than Miss Nettie plodded up the steps. As she lifted the door handle, a look of confusion crossed her face. She tried again, this time pushing harder on the outside of the door. She rattled, shook, and pounded on the door. "What's wrong with this door?" she said. After several more tries, she gathered the children at the bottom of the steps. "The door seems to be locked tight," Miss Nettie said. Benjy stared at his teacher and felt a chuckle ready to burst out of him. He covered his mouth with his arm and pretended to sneeze. But Miss Nettie shook her fingers in the air and then pointed at his chin, and then single one of his huddled buddies. "Is there anything anyone would like to tell me?" Miss Nettie said. Benjy held his breath and eyed Sarah, who squirmed. Her mouth opened and then closed. No one uttered a word, not one word. Miss Nettie turned beet red. "Okay, we're wasting time," she all but growled as she marched down the school steps. "Come gather round the elm tree. It's a beautiful day. Have a seat and we'll work on your spelling lessons." "What?" Benjy muttered. "Is Miss Nettie serious? We don't have any books." "Or chalk," Joshua said. "Or chalkboards," Frankie added. "How are we going to do spelling?" The children all looked at one another. This wasn't the way things were supposed to work out. "Well, come on, everyone. We have the rest of the school day to finish," Miss Nettie said. "No baseball game," Benjy complained to his friends. He couldn't believe his bad luck. His dreams of hitting a home run vanished. "Benjy Clemens," Miss Nettie's voice hissed. "Spell Belsnickle." Not only did Miss Nettie keep them at school, she made him spell the first word. Benjy shuddered. The look on Miss Nettie's face sent chills through his body. Spell Belsnickle. Golly, she must be kidding. This isn't one of our spelling words. Benjy looked at his pals, but Joshua and Daniel just stared at the ground. Frankie stared back with his eyes bulging in alarm. Frankie's gonna cave. He's gonna squeal for sure. Benjy muttered to Joshua, "I should have kept him out of it. Now I'll be in a heap of trouble again." "We're all waiting, Benjy." Miss Nettie placed her hands on her hips. "Belsnickle. B-E-L... Gee, Miss Nettie, I don't know." Benjy mumbled and then flopped on the ground. What was she trying to prove anyway? Why was everyone always reminding him of the Belsnickle? The students spent the next 2 hours taking turns spelling the words that Miss Nettie gave them. But not one of them had to spell Belsnickle. Well, at least we're outside. I'd much rather be whacking a baseball. The school day finally ended and Miss Nettie dismissed her class. But what about everyone's jacket and lunch pail? She asked Frankie. Strangely, everyone stood watching Miss Nettie, wondering what to do. Benjy eyed his teacher as she walked towards the open window, as if she knew all along. She made Benjy and his friends boost each other through the window to the unbar of the door and let everyone back inside. Benjy, Frankie, Joshua, and Daniel, I'll have a word with all of you, Miss Nettie said. Starting tomorrow, the 4 of you will give up your last recess to haul in firewood for the wood stove. You will do this every day until Christmas. Yes, Miss Nettie, Benjy said. The other boys nodded as they all scowled at Benjy. By the time Benjy reached home, he had worried himself into a frenzy. Mom bustled about the kitchen, rattling dishes as she set the table, while Pop worked on his outside chores. Both parents seemed way too busy to ask about his day, so Benjy saw no reason to tell them. How did she know who did it? Two of her last words that made his stomach churn and his heart throb. Spell Belsnickle. Benjy groaned as he remembered Miss Nettie's choice of a spelling word that she gave him. He was tired of hearing about that creature with its jingling bells. It makes my skin crawl, Benjy said to Mutt as he headed towards his bedroom. Why'd she choose that word just for me? He remembered Miss Nettie's glare. Maybe it was only natural that she always thought that he was the one causing trouble. Why is my head always spinning with new ideas to make Miss Nettie mad? Truth be told, Benjy knew he had been a bit of a troublemaker. He only hoped that the Belsnickle wasn't watching him today. I guess Miss Nettie's right. After all, I am a bad boy, and no wonder how hard I try, I can't seem to stop looking for trouble. I guess that means the Belsnickle will probably keep looking for me. Chapter 5. Let me get a drink. Everyone enjoying the story so far? This reminds me so much of home. I could almost recount these exact stories from my grandfather telling me of his school days. Okay. Chapter 5. Books and Snakes. Would you look at that? Benjy pointed to Miss Nettie coming up the lane on a brand new bicycle. Wow, that's one fine looking bike, Joshua said. Ain't never seen a new one before. And it's as shiny as a red apple, like when you polish it on your sleeve. The students gathered around Benjy and Joshua to get a better look as their teacher maneuvered her bike alongside the schoolhouse. Well, children, get used to seeing me with this bicycle because I'll be riding it to and from school until the weather brings us snow and ice. The children all gathered around Miss Nettie. Where'd you get it? Benjy asked. And how'd you learn to ride it? I ordered it through a catalog at the general store, and I learned to ride it by practicing. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Something all of you could learn to do more of when it comes to arithmetic and spelling. Can we take it for a ride? Benjy itched. We just want to try it out. I'm going to get me one of these someday. No one is allowed to ride this bicycle but me. Now I want you all to promise to keep your distance so no one gets hurt. Miss Nettie shook her finger and stared at Benjy, Frankie, Joshua, and Daniel. Then she parked the bicycle under the schoolhouse eaves. Come on now, it's just about time for the morning bell to ring. Oh no, not already. Benjy dragged his feet all the way to the porch steps where Miss Nettie officially rang the morning bell. While the students settled into their seats, Miss Nettie took to the morning attendance. Everyone was present. Now who remembers what today is? Miss Nettie said, lifting her eyebrows. A second grader's hand shot into the air. It's Second Wednesday. It's Library Day. Very good, she said. We'll be enjoying a visit by the traveling library any moment. Did everyone remember to bring their books? Benjy jumped up and waved his 2 books. Yay, he shouted, I remembered mine. Miss Nettie gave Benjy her look, and he then sat right back down in his seat. We're very fortunate to have this library that offers good, interesting books from which you can choose, Miss Nettie said, still staring at Benjy. This is an excellent way for all of you to learn about new places, people, and different ways of life. How many books may we get today? Sarah asked. Each student may choose 2 books. I'm sorry, but if you didn't bring your books back from last month, you won't be able to choose any new ones today. Benjy sighed in relief. Gee, I'm sure glad I remember my books. The book on pirates was my favorite. I love Life on the High Seas. Clip, clap, clip, clap, clip, clap. I hear the horses, Frankie shouted, and everyone ran to the windows. The driver reined in a team of 2 horses, pulling a small library cart to stop in front of the school. The driver jumped down from the wagon and opened its sides, revealing rows and rows of books. There were big books, little books, short books, long books, and books of many colors. Miss Nettie dismissed the children to go outside. They all crowded around the cart. Little children started choosing popular picture books stacked on the bottom of the cart. The Little Engine That Could, Heidi, and the Barber were all taken right away. The older children scanned the books, trying to decide which 2 to choose. After a thorough search, Sarah found The Calico Bush and another book filled with embroidery patterns. Benjy held on to Treasure Island and the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Treasure sounded right up his alley. After the children selected their books, Miss Nettie rang the bell for lunch and recess. Following lunch, she announced, book reports are due today, so we'll begin now. All reports will be read aloud in front of the room. Who would like to go first? Lucy Jones waved her hand in the air. Lucy, you seem very excited, so you may go first. Remember to speak up loudly so everyone can hear. Lucy reached into her desk and pulled out her book report, but her hand landed on something else. Benjy watched Lucy's eyes widen when she felt the smooth, dry object. Boy, is she in for a surprise. Benjy chuckled to himself as Lucy bent her head down to look inside her desk. She jumped back and screamed and then started to cry. Whatever is the matter? Miss Nessie rushed to Lucy's desk and placed her hands on Lucy's shoulders. Please stop crying and tell me what's wrong. Oh, Miss Nettie. Lucy laid her head on Miss Nettie's shoulder and sobbed. Her voice shook between her sobs. There's a snake! Lucy screamed again as the snake slithered out of her desk onto the chair and then onto the floor. Every girl in the class screamed and jumped onto their desks while all the boys chuckled. Girls and boys, please calm down. I'm sure Lucy must be mistaken. We've never had a snake in the schoolhouse before. She paused and frowned. Unless somebody put it there. While the girls screamed, the little snake with a striped green body slithered across the floor. Quiet, everyone, Miss Nettie shouted as she patted Lucy's back. Settle down now. It's a harmless snake, and it's probably as scared as you all are. Miss Nettie bent down to pick up the snake, but it slithered away before she could reach it. She chased the snake across the floor, trying to get a hand on it. Get it, Miss Nettie, Daniel yelled. There it goes. Catch it, Miss Nettie, yelled Frankie. Miss Nettie lunged at the snake and grabbed it behind its head. Hooray, you got it, Joshua said. You can sit back down, everyone. Miss Nettie carried the snake to the front door of the room. Since someone brought this little snake along to school today, we'll have a short science lesson. Who knows what kind of snake this is? Frankie raised his hand. Yes, Frankie. It's just a little garter snake, nothing to be afraid of. How can you tell it's a garter snake? Benjy wanted to raise his hand, but decided it was best if he kept quiet. Miss Nettie called on Daniel next. Because of its stripes and because it's green. Yes, Daniel, a garter snake wears stripes all the way down the sides and back. She raised the snake up higher so everyone could see the stripes. This little fellow is green now, but they are also often brown. Now, what do snakes eat? Sarah hesitantly held up her hand. Maybe insects? That is correct. Garter snakes do eat insects such as crickets and grasshoppers as well as worms and snails. Does anyone know where a garter snake is most likely to hide? Considering I found the snake sunning itself on a rock by the fishing hole on my way to school, I definitely know the answer to Miss Nettie's question. But Benjy didn't say a word. Daniel raised his hand. They live under rocks. Good job, everyone. I would say we had a fine science lesson this afternoon. Benjy, you have been awfully quiet. Is everything all right? Sure, Miss Nettie. Well, I think that since this little fellow came to see us today, we should give him a name before we release him back into the woods. And I think I have the perfect name for him. Frankie, come up to the chalkboard and please write his name for everyone to see. Frankie looked confused and uneasy as he slid out of his seat and walked to the chalkboard. Please write this out in big letters for all the children to see. Frankie wrote the letters as Miss Nettie spelled the word for him. Belsnickle. Frankie, please proceed to say aloud the name of our new little friend here. Frankie mumbled the word, Belsnickle. I don't think everyone can hear you. Please repeat it louder. Frankie then declared, Belsnickle. Benjy swallowed hard. Oh no, what is she trying to prove? Does anyone know why I chose that name? A room full of children shook their heads. Well, just like this little snake, the Belsnickle can turn up at any time in any place. She held the snake up in front of the class one more time. Frankie and Benjy, would you please do us the honor of sending little Belsnickle on his way by releasing him into the woods? She handed the snake to Benjy, at the end, who joined Frankie at the back door. I don't even want to know, Frankie said to Benjy as they walked into the woods. Know what? I just don't want to know, Frankie shook his head. What's got you all fussed up, Benjy said, spotting a flat rock. Here's as good a place as any. Let's put him down and set him free. The little snake slithered away into the woods. When the boys returned to the schoolhouse, Benjy moaned. The children were already enjoying the lunch break outside. You're sure itching for a visit from that Belsnickle fellow, aren't you? Said Frankie. He quickly sprinted away to join his friends on the other side of the playground. Thanks a lot, Frankie. Benjy shoved his hands into his pockets. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sarah strolling towards him. Hey, Sarah, Benjy said. That was scary, wasn't it, Benjy? Nah, it was just a little garter snake. He wasn't out to hurt anyone. Don't know why you girls got to screaming so much. How do you think he got in there? Benjy shrugged his shoulders. I'm not scared anymore, Sarah said. Then she told Benjy how much she liked living and going to school in Landisburg. They talked about it until lunch break had ended, with Benjy focusing on Sarah's every word. I hope she likes me as much as I like her. After the afternoon recess, Lucy and several of the other students finally gave their book reports, and the afternoon quickly slipped away. When the dismissal bell rang, Benjy didn't race to get out of the schoolhouse as fast as he usually did. Instead, he pondered the whole snake incident. For the first time in a long time, he thought he had gotten away with one of his pranks, but for some reason his throat got a lump in it, and his stomach churned over and over. Dear God, I am sorry. I just can't seem to stay out of mischief. I reckon there's little hope for the likes of me. Chapter 6. Hot Soup. Girls and boys, Miss Nettie called for the students to come inside the schoolhouse as red, yellow, and orange leaves whirled around their heads. On this crisp Monday morning in November, she seemed eager to make an announcement. On Friday, we will be having a special guest. As you know, the school inspector, Mr. Lewis, comes twice a year to make sure we have enough teaching supplies and that the schoolhouse is in good condition. He'll check the building itself, looking for any kind of holes in the walls or loose floorboards. Then he'll also listen to some of you read and ask you questions. Our school is the best school, Benjy commented. Benjy's right, the other student shouted. Yes, I agree with all of you, but it's not up to us. So be sure to have all your school supplies on Friday. I will make Mr. Lewis happy. It will make Mr. Lewis happy to see that we have a good supply for everyone. We'll have them, don't worry, Miss Nettie, Sarah said. As a special treat for the inspector, I'll be making a large kettle of vegetable soup for lunch that we can keep hot on the wood stove. We'll also enjoy some fresh baked bread. Yum. Benjy remembered last year when Miss Nettie brought a kettle of her homemade vegetable soup and warm buttery bread. It was so good, it's making me hungry, and it ain't even lunchtime. I could bake some cookies, Sarah said. That's very thoughtful. Thank you, Sarah. There'll be plenty of food for all of you, so there's no need to bring your lunches that day. Yay! A chorus of voices echoed through the room. No meat or jelly sandwiches on Friday, said Frankie. Miss Nettie's probably hoping to impress the inspector with a big pot of hot soup. Oh boy, my mind is already working on another prank. Benjy grinned from ear to ear, watching his friend's reaction. Oh no, Joshua said to Frankie and Daniel. Look at Benjy's grin, and his eyes are all lit up. He's up to something for sure. Daniel tapped his head with his index finger. His wheels are turning all right. Don't worry, drumming his fingers on the desk. Benjy grinned at each of them. It'll be a lot of fun. Frankie held up both hands and shook his head. I don't want anything to do with whatever you're up to, he said. My folks are mad enough already that we helped you lock Miss Nettie out of the schoolhouse. Mine too, said Daniel. With a deep sigh, Joshua nodded in agreement. Mine warned me to stay away from any more of your pranks. Benjy glared at his friends. You're nothing but a bunch of sissies, he said. Miss Nettie tapped her ruler on the desk to get everyone's attention. Okay, let's settle down and get back to our schoolwork. Everyone get out your readers and read silently where you left off last week. Benjy watched Miss Nettie rifle through stacks of papers and sometimes stop to make a mark. She probably must make sure everything is just right for when Mr. Lewis gets here on Friday. I don't see why he needs to be snooping around our school. In an hour, Miss Nettie rang the recess bell. Although the air was nippy and a hat and coat were needed, the children still enjoyed playing outside during recess. Today they played Mother May I, a game where all the children lined up and asked permission from the student playing the part of mother if they could please take 2 steps forward. If the student forgot to say please, they had to move backwards 2 steps instead. Benjy loved the game because he liked to sneak as many steps forward as he could. This was allowed as long as the player doing the sneaking didn't get caught. It didn't surprise anyone that Benjy was especially good at this part of the game and frequently won. By the time Thursday came, Miss Nettie began turning the schoolhouse upside down in a cleaning frenzy. Little children cleaned the small slates and chalk erasers and dusted the bookshelves. The older students washed the windows, the large slate blackboard, and slapped the rugs clean outside with a metal rug beater. All the students cleaned out their desks. Benjy pulled out old spitballs, crumpled up work papers, and even mud-covered marbles from his desk. When Miss Nettie decided to look inside all the desks, Benjy quickly grabbed an object from the back of his desk and stuffed it into his pants pocket. Miss Nettie stopped at Benjy's desk and smiled. Benjy had cleaned out his desk and arranged his slate, books, tablet, pencil, chalk, into neat little piles inside the desk. Benjy caught Joshua staring at him with a questioning look. When Miss Nettie passed by, Joshua whispered, "After the trouble I got into helping you lock the teacher out of the schoolhouse, I don't really want to know what you're up to." Daniel leaned over. "Me either. Me either," said Frankie. On Friday morning, Miss Nettie glowed, letting her students know with a big grin that she knew many of them had taken special care with their appearances, wearing their Sunday best. Taking note of the time, Miss Nettie asked the students to take out their tablets and practice their penmanship. Now remember, paper and pencils are quite expensive, so use your tablets carefully. The children had been practicing for just a short time when Miss Nettie heard a rap at the door. She welcomed Mr. Lewis, a short, lean man dressed in a suit and bow tie. He tipped his black derby hat and removed it from his head, and eyed all the children who were busy with their penmanship. "Wonderful boys and girls," he said. "I'm thrilled to see all of you practicing your penmanship." "Something smells mighty fine," he said as he walked through the entire schoolhouse, inspecting the condition of the walls, windows, floors, and peeking into the kettle on top of the wood stove. "What do we have here?" Mr. Lewis stopped at Sarah's desk. Holding up her penmanship for all the others to see, he said, "Excellent handwriting." Sarah beamed her best smile. He then walked to the blackboard and wrote an equation. 2 plus 4 equals... The little children began sitting in a front row, waved their hands until Mr. Lewis chose a first-grade student to give the correct answer. 6, said the little boy. "Very fine," Mr. Lewis replied. He then turned to a few of the older students and asked Daniel to name the capital of Pennsylvania, to which Daniel replied, "Harrisburg." "Good, good," Mr. Lewis said. He asked Lucy Jones to spell holiday. "Holiday," Lucy recited. "Nicely done." "Young man," he said, standing next to Benjy, "stand and read the first 2 paragraphs in Chapter 7 of your geography book." Miss Nettie's eyes widened, but she couldn't move a muscle. Benjy stood and smoothly read the text. A big smile spread across Miss Nettie's face. After another hour and a half of Mr. Lewis's questioning, Miss Nettie announced, "Lunchtime, everyone." Her voice filled the room. "Would Sarah, Daniel, Lucy, and Benjy please lend me a hand?" Those kids all hurried forward. "Daniel, you can pass out the spoons to each student. Lucy, you may pass out the sliced bread to everyone. Benjy, you may ladle the soup into the bowls while I'll carry them to each of the students' desks. And Sarah, you can give everyone one of your delicious sugar cookies." After all the students were served, Miss Nettie asked Mr. Lewis to say a prayer. The children bowed their heads. "Thank you, God, for the education being provided to these students and for the wonderful meal we are about to receive," Mr. Lewis said. "Amen," said the children. "Go ahead, class, eat up. Then you may all go outside for recess." "But what about you and Mr. Lewis? Can I ladle each of you a bowl of soup?" Benjy asked. "Well, thank you, Benjy. That's very thoughtful of you," Miss Nettie said. Standing behind the wood stove, Benjy quickly slipped a shaker of pepper as black as the Belsnickle's boots from his pocket and dumped a fair amount into the 2 bowls. He then delivered a bowl to Miss Nettie and one to Mr. Lewis, who were talking non-stop. Momentarily, they ignored the soup. Benjy gulped down his soup and joined the other kids outside. Only a few minutes passed before the students heard a loud noise. "Achoo! Achoo!" The sneezes were followed by a high-pitched squeal coming from Miss Nettie. The children raced back to the classroom only to find a red-faced Mr. Lewis holding a handkerchief to his runny nose. "Look," Daniel said, "tears are running from his eyes. A stream of sneezes filled the air." "He's not looking too good," Sarah said. "What should we do?" "Well, water," Mr. Lewis muttered. "Water, water! Somebody please bring some water." Miss Nettie wailed. Frankie, who sat closest to the water bucket, dipped the ladleful. "I'm coming," Frankie said as he hurried up front. Mr. Lewis gulped down the water. "More! More!" Once again, Frankie ran back and filled the ladle and handed it to Mr. Lewis. Again, Mr. Lewis gulped it down. "Bring me a bucket!" Frankie ran for the bucket. Mr. Lewis immediately held the bucket to his mouth. Gulp, gulp, gulp. He drank even more water, making loud choking noises. Water dribbled down his chin and onto his suit coat. "Wow, you sure drank a lot of water," Frankie said. "Are you all right, Mr. Lewis?" Miss Nettie's voice shook. "Who made this soup?" he asked. "Well, I did," said Miss Nettie. "I don't understand why yours was so hot." She watched as he fanned his mouth with a piece of paper. "The children and I are all fine." "Pepper! Too much pepper!" he roared. "Benjamin Clemens!" Miss Nettie shouted. Benjy jumped at the loudness of her voice. "Yes, Miss Nettie?" With a quivering voice, she said, "Come here and apologize to Mr. Lewis." Mr. Lewis regained his composure, packed his briefcase, and headed for the door. "Sorry, Mr. Lewis. Is our schoolhouse okay?" Benjy asked. Without so much as a nod, Mr. Lewis continued to the door and never looked back. The children began giggling and taking turns pretending they were sneezing too. "Achoo! Achoo!" "Quiet, everyone," Miss Nettie yelled at the top of her lungs. Not a sound could be heard. Benjy knew without a doubt that he was in a heap of trouble when he pulled the long wooden ruler from her desk. Miss Nettie rarely used the ruler on her students, although many of the other teachers were quick to use it as a form of punishment. "Stand still and hold out your hands, palms up." Benjy forced his hands in front of him. He held them still while Miss Nettie raised her arm and lowered the ruler with force. Smack! Benjy's hands gave under the force of the ruler. Still, Benjy held out his palms while the ruler hit again and again. Then another, 10 times. Although he winced in pain, he never uttered a sound. With red palms, Benjy suffered all the blows. "I have just one question for you, Benjamin Clemens." "Why?" "I don't know, Miss Nettie. He came snooping around and he could have closed down our school." Too angry to talk, she held onto Benjy's arm as she walked to the dismissal bell. The children, still quiet as church mice, almost knocked one another over trying to get out of the door. "Benjamin," Miss Nettie turned and stared him in the face. "I have already warned you about a visit from the Belsnickle. Christmas is only a month away. If you think that ruler hurt, you should be trembling in your shoes at the thought of the Belsnickle's whip." "Sorry, Miss Nettie. I only meant to scare Mr. Lewis a little, so that he wouldn't come back again." Benjy stared down at his shoes. "You just better hope he does come back and that he gives our school a passing grade. I'm very ashamed of you right now." "You will write an essay tomorrow about the importance of good behavior and have it on my desk first thing in the morning. 200 words, Benjy." "Yes, Miss Nettie." "Okay, then you can go." Benjy grabbed his tablet and pencil and hightailed it to the door. When he reached the fishing hole, he dunked his stinging hands into the fresh, cool water. He shuddered when he heard a jingling bell. He looked up only to find old Albert standing behind him with his tackle box. "Something wrong, son?" old Albert asked. "I thought I heard a jingle bell." Old Albert bent down and picked a round gold bell from his tackle box. "Oh, you mean this old thing?" Old Albert held it up for Benjy to see. "Why do you have a bell in your tackle box?" "Well, I don't rightly remember. I found it somewhere, I guess." "Well, why did you keep it?" Old Albert jingled the bell. "I like the sound." "Yeah, that's it. I like the sound." Benjy stared at old Albert. Could it be? Could old Albert be the Belsnickle? "Oh, I gotta get going. I'll see you later." Benjy backed up slowly and turned and ran towards home. Benjy looked at his hands and remembered the ruler, but he knew deep down that its stinging was nothing compared to the lashing of that mean creature's whip. Are we having fun? Chapter 7. We're about halfway through. I might just get through this whole thing tonight. Alright, Chapter 7. Let me situate myself here a minute. Alright, Chapter 7 is called Dorsey Will. November passed with quiet Clemens' Thanksgiving dinner, where Benjy gobbled down his favorite, one of the roasted turkey legs. A few days later, on the 1st of December, Benjy woke up early, just as dawn lit the gray stormy skies. After glancing out the window, he reached over and scratched Mutt's head. "Hey, Mutt, look at all that snow." Benjy jumped out of bed to watch the falling snowflakes. "It's the first snow of the year, Mutt, and I'm aching to get some sledding down." Dorsey Hill. "I'm so glad old Albert owns that land and lets us sled there." Woof, woof. Mutt spun across the floor, dancing on his two back legs. "What should I do, Mutt? I want to sled instead of going to school. I gotta sit and think." Benjy sat on the edge of the bed and put his elbows on his knees and grew quiet. Then he looked up. "I got it. I got a plan. Frankie, Joshua, and Daniel don't want anything more to do with any of my pranks, so this has to be a one-man job." The storekeeper, Mr. Martin, always woke up early on the coldest days. Generously walked to the schoolhouse and started the fire for the wood stove. The weather had turned cold overnight, and Mr. Martin made sure that Miss Nettie and the children would have a nice warm classroom when the school day finally began at 8:45 a.m. Benjy glanced at the clock and thought about Mr. Martin. Just a little past 6 o'clock. He heard him put on his pants and heavy flannel shirt. "I'll need to beat Mr. Martin to the schoolhouse this morning if my plan's going to work." Benjy slipped on his boots, coat, and hat, grabbed his mittens, and got a huge handful of old rags from the back porch, and stuffing them into a burlap sack, he left through the back door. He left there so no one would notice his footprints in the snow. "As fast as the snow's coming down, my footsteps should disappear in no time." Finding it hard to run through the forest in the deepening snow, he took giant steps at the schoolhouse. No smoke puffed out of the chimney pipe. "I think I made it on time, but I better hurry." Benjy lifted the latch to the schoolhouse door, relieved to see an empty building. Shivering from the cold, he removed his mittens and opened the bag of rags he had brought with him. Carefully, he separated the wood stove's connecting pipe pieces that curved together to make an S shape. He stuffed the upper pipe with rags to stop the smoke from rising from the lower pipe. Listening for any sign of Mr. Martin, he quickly reconnected the two pieces of the pipe. He hoped Mr. Martin would think an animal had built a nest inside the pipes and caused a clog. He crossed his fingers for good luck and hightailed it back home. Fortunately for Benjy, he made it back home in less than an hour. And Ma and Pop were still sleeping when he crept up the back stairs, and Mutt was still curled up on the blankets. Benjy stood in front of the mirror and saw none other than the face of the Belsnickle, all covered in soot, staring back at him. Ripples of fear made his skin crawl. He wasted no time in washing the chimney soot off his face and hands. "I don't need any reminders of that Belsnickle. I know I done wrong again, and I just don't understand why I can't stop myself." He stripped off his pants and shirt and crawled back into his pajamas. Looking out the window, he could see his tracks already disappearing under the fresh snow. He cuddled up with Mutt. Dear God, please help me be good and do the right thing instead of always making the wrong choices. With his body warming under the covers, sleep, as usual, overtook Benjy's pleas to God for help once again. A short time later, Benjy awoke, hearing Pop stalk down the stairs and stoke up the coals left in the fireplace and the wood stove. Confused, Benjy couldn't remember if earlier that morning really had happened or if he'd just been dreaming. Stretching and sitting up in bed, he saw his pants and shirt and knew he hadn't been dreaming. Getting dressed for the day, Benjy left Mutt snuggled beneath the covers. But when he headed down the stairway, Mutt came trotting behind him. Good morning, Ma. Good morning, Pop. Good morning, Benjy, Pop said. I think you better have a peek outside. Benjy walked to the window. Gee whiz, this is a lot of snow. You better eat your oatmeal and get an early start to school today. After Benjy gobbled down his breakfast, Ma handed him his lunch pail. Benjy buttoned his coat, pulled his hat down over his ears, and took one step off the front porch and discovered the snow almost covered half his knee height in boots. I hate to think of making this trek through the forest for the second time this morning. Nearing the schoolhouse, he wasn't sure what to think. No smoke poured out of the chimney just as Benjy had planned, but no smoke curled out of the open doors or windows. The students huddled in the schoolyard, and Miss Nettie, covered in a layer of soot, coughed at the school's front doorway. Children, please stay outside, she ordered. The schoolroom is filled with smoke, and Mr. Martin doesn't know what happened to our wood stove. Miss Nettie coughed again and again. Miss Nettie, are you okay? Frankie asked. I'll be fine, but I'm afraid there will be no school today. Everyone please go home. We will resume school tomorrow if our classroom is back to normal. Now be careful and go home. A mixture of moans and cheers filled the chilly air. Don't worry, Miss Nettie, Sarah said. We'll all walk together and make sure that the little children get home safely. Thank you kindly, Sarah. I can always count on you. Miss Nettie stared back at Benjy. He quickly looked down. If we find out that the stovepipe has been tampered with, I will find out who did it, and they will be disciplined very severely. Okay, you're all dismissed. Oh, I'm in really big trouble this time, Benjy thought as he turned and walked away. I'm going to get the whooping of my life if this Belsnickle catches me. The students waved goodbye to Miss Nettie and they all hurried home. On the trek home, the children began recounting the story of Balto, the sled dog. They never tired of hearing the story about Balto. Hurrah, hurrah for Balto! Hurrah, hurrah for Balto! The children cheered and marched. At least for a little while, it got Benjy's mind off his awful prank and the Belsnickle. Balto was a husky sled dog and a hero because he saved the children from Nome, Alaska, when he delivered medicine to them. The children were sick with diphtheria, but Balto and the sled dogs were able to get the medicine to them through the snow and ice. Some of the children said they couldn't wait to get home to color a page in their Balto coloring books. Others, like Benjy, couldn't wait to change into their old winter clothes and drag their sleds out of storage. Benjy already forgot what he had done that morning. With a big grin on his face, he yelled to the other children, "Let's meet at Dorsey Hill in an hour." An hour later, the children of all ages showed up at Dorsey Hill with sleds in hand and some kind or another. Benjy got goosebumps when he saw Sarah show up with Lucy tagging along. Benjy's glance shifted to Sarah and to all of the sleds. There was Lightning, Guider, sleds with metal runners, a bobsled with a newly waxed wooden runner, scoop shovels, metal dish basins, and even a metal tabletop with leather straps. Benjy pulled a wooden bobsled that had once been Pop's, yearning to try a practice run and get a nice smooth path started down the hill. At the top of the hill, Benjy called to Frankie, Joshua, and Daniel to climb on board for the first run down. 4 heads bobbled around as the sled dipped and rose over the bumps until finally coming to a stop. "Yay!" they all hollered. As soon as the first track had been laid, others followed until a hard-packed, slippery track formed. Helping to pack down the snow even more, the sleds with metal runners went next, followed by the children riding scoop shovels with the handles to grasp and balance. Those in the metal basins laughed and laughed as they spun around and around. Since the tabletop held as many as 6 kids, Benjy and Sarah decided to venture a ride on this unlikely sled. As it went whizzing down the hill, snow flew in their faces, and they had to squint to keep it out of their eyes. Like the basins, it kept spinning in circles all the way down, making the riders dizzy by the time they reached the bottom of the hill. The children spent hours giggling on the way down and then wearily trudging back up to the top of the hill only to make another fast ride down. Those with the metal runner sleds were joined by others, riding down the hill together in pairs. Others piled as many as 3 children, laying on top of one another, holding each other down as they flew down the hill. Everyone learned quickly to hang on and enjoy the ride. At least until Benjy, Frankie, Daniel, and Joshua decided to hook their feet together in the metal sled runners to form a train ride down the hill. At the start, they all stayed together, but as soon as Benjy broke free from the train, then followed by Frankie, next Daniel couldn't hold on any longer, so he and Joshua split. Daniel stayed on the track, but Joshua went flying across the pasture where he tumbled against a barbed wire fence. "Yow!" he yelled so that everyone heard him. All the children ran to help. Benjy detangled Joshua from the sled and saw where the barbed wire fence had cut a gash into his friend's cheek. Blood left a reddened trail on the pure white snow. "Look," Frankie said as Lucy and Sarah turned away. "Bet they can't handle the sight of blood." Benjy quickly packed the side of Joshua's face with snow to help ease the pain and to stop the bleeding. With Joshua holding the snow against his cheek, Benjy and Daniel lifted him onto the sled. Frankie ran to get Joshua's parents. Meanwhile, Benjy and Daniel took turns pulling Joshua to the nearest house, Old Albert's place. Benjy rushed to the front door and pounded hard. Old Albert, we need your help." Old Albert quickly opened his door. "What happened here?" "Joshua ran his sled into the barbed wire fence around the pasture near Dorsey Hill." "Let me see there, Joshua. What's the damage?" Old Albert gently removed Joshua's hand from his cheek. Did anybody go for his parents?" "I'm afraid he'll be needing to see the doctor. That's a pretty mean-looking gash he's got." In what seemed like hours to Benjy and Joshua, his parents arrived in their wagon and hauled their son over the snowy roads to the doctor. Benjy and the other children gathered at the top of Dorsey Hill, where they bowed their heads and prayed that Joshua would be okay. Then, after a few more hours of sledding, most of the kids were frozen stiff, just like their soaked hats and gloves. One by one, they made their ways home to their warm houses, where they knew they could strip off their snowsuits and huddle around the wood stove to get dry. "I sure feel bad about Joshua," Benjy said to Sarah on their way home. "But what a great day of sledding! You were amazing, Benjy, the way you took control and got Joshua help as quick as possible. You even helped stop the bleeding when you packed it with snow. You're a real hero." Later that night, tired after a long day of sledding, Benjy remembered Sarah's words. Wow, no wonder no one ever called me a hero before. But if the truth be told, he knew who clogged up the stovepipe that morning at the schoolhouse, and nobody would call that boy a hero. I don't deserve Sarah's praise. If anyone does deserve a visit from the Belsnickle, it's gotta be me. Chapter 8. The Barn Dance. I'm about to start on my second drink here. I went through that first one already. I got a row of drinks piled up here because I knew my voice was going to start getting hoarse. Okay. While December started out with a brisk, wintry snowstorm, the week of the community barn dance proved to be much milder. Thanks a lot to Benjy, Frankie moaned. Benjy, Daniel, and Joshua each lugged an armload of firewood from the woodpile to the school's indoor wood stove. After 6 weeks of this chore, Benjy's buddies were ready to swear off his pranks for good. "Why'd you have to come up with such a stupid plan?" Joshua said as he kicked the dirt. Benjy noticed Joshua's cut on his cheek from the sledding accident was beginning to fade into a small scar. "I told you the prank wouldn't work," Frankie said, even though being the lookout guy was the most important part of the plan. He puffed up his chest. "Yeah, we never should have listened to you, Benjy," Daniel growled. "Well, at least it's Friday and we're done for the week." "But Miss Nettie is making us do this all the way up through Christmas," Joshua said. "And by the way, locking the teacher out of the schoolhouse wasn't even our idea." "No one made you do it," Benjy said. "You could have all said no, so quit whining. Besides, tomorrow night is the Christmas barn dance. Aren't you excited?" "Yeah, because there'll be lots of good food," Frankie rubbed his stomach. "And don't forget the taffy pool," Benjy said. "We all go home with a big bag of candy." "What's that I smell?" Benjy awoke on Saturday morning with a scent of rich, savory molasses and the sound of his mother humming Christmas carols. "Yum," Benjy said. He crawled out from beneath his covers. "Hey, Mutt, tonight is the Christmas barn dance. Everyone from Landisburg will be out and about tonight." Benjy leapt from his bed and pulled his shirt and pants on and darted down the stairs while Mutt stayed buried under the warm covers. Sure enough, the kitchen held tantalizing, gooey, wet-bottomed shoe-fly pie and molasses cookies. "I can't wait. These pies and cookies are sure to taste good tonight." "Oh, Benjy, I'm so glad you're up," Ma said. "Eat your breakfast and then hurry and bring in some of our nicest potatoes to make my potato salad for tonight." The blood drained from Benjy's face. Not the ground cellar. All the farms in the area had outdoor cellars dug into the ground where they could store their vegetables and fruits throughout the winter, without their produce freezing. PA had dug their cellar into the side, or Paul, what did I say, PA? Paul had dug their cellar into the side of the small hill just a short distance from the house. "Ah, sure, Ma." Benjy swiped the cookie for breakfast and grabbed a large bowl. His feet trudged heavily as he headed across the hillside where the ground cellar's wooden door waited for him. Cautiously, he stepped inside the cool, musty darkness. The door slammed shut behind him. "I love my potato salad, but I sure hate this ground cellar. It's dark and cold and creepy." Only a wee bit of light peeped through the cellar door. A tiny window. Yipes! A cobweb brushed across his face. He swiped and flailed at the cobweb, feeling as though 1,000 spiders had just jumped on his face and were racing up and down his arms. He sidestepped the garden tools and baskets of cabbages and apples and turnips until he reached the potato bin. What did Ma mean by the nicest potatoes? In this light, they all looked the same to me. He scooped up handfuls of potatoes and filled the bowl. He turned to leave and heard a clang. What was that? A bell? Something moved in the shadows. Thump. Something hard bumped against his leg. Straining to see, he discovered Pop's hoe. Clang! He heard it again. It sounded like the clanging of a clock. Benjy wasn't taking any chances. Like a warrior, he grabbed the hoe's handle and stood ready for battle. "Who's there?" Benjy shouted. "No one," answered the Belsnickle. It had to be the Belsnickle. Desperately, Benjy tried to locate the door, hoping he had his bearings. He thrust forward, wildly swinging the hoe. All the foreboding shadows while the potatoes wobbled about in the bowl. He lunged his body against the door, landing in the brilliant sunlight. Not until the door slammed shut behind him was he sure he'd made it safely out of the ground cellar. Phew, my mind is really playing tricks on me. He looked down in amazement at the bowl of potatoes still clutched in his hand. Thank goodness I still hold on to Mom's potatoes. He ran like the wind to the house, dropping and picking up the spilled potatoes along the way. After delivering the bowl to the kitchen, Benjy's thoughts focused again on the night ahead. He looked forward to the barn dance, especially getting to see Sarah again. She was so nice to take the time to talk to him after the snake thing with Lucy. Then she let him walk her home and after the sledding at Dorsey Hill. The excitement of spending more time with Sarah sent an invasion of goosebumps up and down his spine. When purple, orange, and golden hues streaked the evening sky, the Clemens family gathered their baskets of food and set out on the short walk to the neighbor's barn. As they neared the barn, they heard the sound of banjos and fiddles. Soon, they spotted bright lights beaming from the windows and the loft of the old battered red barn. Inside, the rows of tables lined the wall. Benjy's mouth watered as Ma placed her potato salad and cookies on the table, then unwrapped her pies. He quickly eyed the dance floor, where old Albert was already kicking up his heels. Benjy's heart pounded in his chest when he spied Sarah on the other side of the room. Although the dance floor allowed plenty of room for folks to dance, its perimeter provided a place where family and friends could reunite. Soon the Perkins family joined them, with Sarah in tow. Benjy tried to move towards his friends, but Pop's hand on Benjy's shoulder planted him firmly on the spot. Instead, Benjy listened to Ma and Pa greet the Perkins and asked them how they liked living in their farm. Meanwhile, Benjy fidgeted with the button on his shirt. He watched as Frankie and Joshua tried to follow a square dance called by old Albert. Then Benjy stared at his feet. He studied the cobwebs in the rafters. He scanned the food table. Mostly he sneaked little peeks at Sarah. A shiny red ribbon in her hair, and eyes as blue as the pirate's sea. How could Ma have so much to talk about? Doesn't she know I'm being tortured by just standing here? Oh dear, Miss Perkins said. I'm afraid we're boring these young folks to tears. I'm sure Benjy would like to dance with your lovely daughter, Ma said. Dance? What could Ma possibly be thinking? I don't even know how to dance. And I surely don't want to learn tonight with Sarah Perkins. But Ma... Benjy just stared at the empty space on the dance floor. I'm thirsty, Sarah said. How about some punch? Whew! Benjy ran his hand over his forehead. Come on. Benjy led Sarah towards the punch bowl. Let's go grab some goodies and join everyone else. Benjy pointed at the classmates standing along the wall. I'm sure glad you and I are friends, Sarah said. Benjy felt his cheeks turn fiery hot. He led the way to the punch bowl. As they stood drinking, Joshua, Daniel, and Frankie and several more classmates joined them. Hey, look, Benjy, Joshua said. Over there is Bruce Yeager from the Red Bank and the school gang. How'd he get here? Benjy muttered. Must have hitched a ride with someone. Reckon we can beat him in this year's hockey match? Joshua said to Benjy. Benjy grinned and gave him a light punch on the shoulder. Well, we'll give it our best shot. So, Sarah, how do you like our school? Joshua said. I like it just fine. Everybody is so nice. What about Christmas? What's everyone hoping to get this year? A hockey stick. Daniel took an imaginary swing. That way we're sure to beat those Red Bank fellas. I wouldn't mind getting a new baseball mitt, Frankie said. A shiny new ribbon would be nice, as Sarah touched the one in her hair. What about you, Benjy? What do you want for Christmas? Not expecting anything this year. The only Christmas surprise I don't want is a visit from that scary sooty Belsnickle. Oh, Benjy, you'll find something under your tree, Frankie said. I don't think I deserve a present under my tree this year. I only pray that the Belsnickle stays away from my house. Attention, boys and girls, old Albert announced from the stage a few minutes later. The taffy's done cooking and we're just about ready to start the annual taffy pull, so who's ready to pair up? Benjy, would you be my partner? Sarah asked. You bet I would. Sure, that would be swell. Well, we'll be the best looking, best tasting taffy. Frankie rubbed his belly. I can smell the butter and sugar. First, old Albert said, everyone doing the pulling. Wash your hands in the buckets and then grease your hands with lots and lots of butter to keep the fresh taffy from sticking to your fingers. All the children washed their hands and rubbed them with butter before lifting the ends of the warm glob of candy, then pulling it out 1 foot before quickly folding the taffy back from the one set of hands to the other. Grabbing the center of the pull, they folded it in half and pulled it out and again and again. Sarah giggled as she and Benjy worked the sticky candy into the shape of 1/2 inch rope. It's getting mighty hard to pull, Benjy said. I think it's about ready, Sarah said. Together, they laid their hardened piece of taffy on the tray and started cutting it with a pair of scissors dipped in cold water. 1 inch cut pieces. Then they wrapped the pieces with wax paper and divided them into little paper sacks. We did it, Sarah and Benjy cheered, while they watched their friends finish pulling and cutting their own batches of taffy. That was so much fun, Benjy laughed. After the taffy pull, the hours flew by as everyone took turns telling stories. A few of Benjy's friends ventured out on the dance floor, but Benjy was happy that Sarah seemed content to just talk. Before Benjy knew it, Mom motioned for him to come and help her carry out their food baskets. In the corners, little children curled up asleep on benches or nestled soundly on their mother's laps. It's best to get going to help Mom and Pa. Benjy turned towards Sarah. See you in church tomorrow. All right, good night, Benjy, Sarah smiled. Benjy's heart flipped, and then he joined his parents, gathering the baskets of empty pie pans, and the potato salad dish was wiped clean, too. I'll carry those for you, Benjy said, and grabbed the baskets. Despite his happiness about the way the evening had gone, Benjy still wrestled with the feelings of remorse and fear. What if that Belsnickle's coming for me? Reaching home, Benjy set the baskets down and went straight to bed. Tucked under the warmth of his quilt and snuggled with Mutt, he thought about Sarah. But soon his sleep was filled with images of a scary creature dancing on the shadowy walls and ceilings of his room. Just as a scrawny hand with long jointed fingers reached out to grab him, he jerked awake and wiped away beads of sweat trickling down his face. His heart thumped in his chest as he stared at the night sky. Dear God, I reckon you're the only one who can help me now. Chapter 9, The Christmas Spirit. Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. The student's zestful tone ushered in the holiday spirit, for indeed Christmas, or Gritchtag, was drawing near. I sing like an old toad, and I'm not taking the chance of the weird noises coming out of my mouth. Benjy soundlessly formed the song's words. Benjy chuckled as he looked at Miss Nettie's face. She could not stop smiling at the children. I think Miss Nettie has taught us every Christmas carol ever written. But when are we ever going to get to chopping down that Christmas tree? They sang a few more songs. Then Benjy and his schoolmates hurried when Miss Nettie announced it was time to go hunt for a tree. I'm so excited, Benjy told Joshua. They pulled up on their boots and winter garments. Not only is it Fun to find a tree. We also get out of school, too. All the boys laughed. Let's go, children, Miss Nettie said as she clapped her hands. In minutes, Miss Nettie and the entire class trekked over all the freshly fallen snow through the Sherwood forest on a quest to find the perfect tree. In the woods, Benjy wandered off by himself when he came across some giant footprints in the snow. He scouted the hillside where a shadow caught his attention. What is that? Something black? Something lurking in the trees? Could it be the Belsnickle? Surely he wouldn't come after me with all the other kids around, would he? He stood listening for even the faintest noise of a clock. But no bells, no jingling, and no footsteps. Get moving, Benjy, Joshua yelled. Stop daydreaming. Benjy ran ahead to the rest of the students, determined to find the best tree for the school as he had done the year before. Then his mouth dropped open. There it stood, 7 feet tall, the perfect tree. Now I'll get to chop down the tree. Look out, Axe, here I come. Wow, come look, everybody. Benjy ran over to the tree and touched one of its branches. The children scrambled to his side while Miss Nettie huffed and puffed her way up the hill. Hey, Benjy, you did it again, Daniel slapped him on the back. This tree is huge. That's a fine-looking tree, Miss Nettie smiled at Benjy. Good job. You have a great eye for trees. Benjy could feel his chest puff up. Ha, Mr. Belsnickle, what do you think of that? Stand back, everybody. Miss Nettie made sure everybody was safe when she handed Benjy the axe. Be careful, Benjy. Whack, whack. Benjy struck the trunk of the tree several times. With the axe in his hand, Benjy felt brave as he took one more look at the forest around him. You better look out, Mr. Belsnickle. I got an axe. Feeling safe, Benjy helped drag the tree back to the schoolhouse. The older boy shoved the spruce through the door. When held upright in the corner of the room, the tree just about reached the ceiling, and the children got busy making decorations for its many branches. I'm making a paper chain out of red and green paper, Sarah said. Many of the little children colored pictures of the baby Jesus, angels, snowman, Santa Claus, and his reindeer. I just love Christmas. Benjy's heart raced with excitement, and he rubbed his belly. There's candy and loads of cookies. There are always surprises under this tree. Miss Nettie watched as her students created a hubbub of activity in the classroom. Look, Joshua. She's pulling the can from her desk drawer. Benjy knew what Miss Nettie planned to do. She clapped her hands 3 times. It's time to pick the names for the gift exchange. Children, you can choose to give a handmade gift or buy a small gift at the general store. Miss Nettie passed the can around among the students. Benjy scrawled his name on a slip of paper and dropped it into the can. After collecting the papers, Miss Nettie shook the can so vigorously that her chin wiggled like a dab of jelly on a crust of bread. That's good. Remember, class, don't share with anyone who you picked for the secret exchange. When it was Benjy's turn to draw, he dug deep inside the can, swirling the folded slips of paper, before finally settling on one slip. He pulled the paper out of the can, closed his fingers around it. Who am I going to get? Who am I going to get? I sure hope I get one of my friends. Holding the paper close to his chest, Benjy unfolded it. His eyes just about popped out of his sockets when he looked at the name. Sarah. Over the next few days, Benjy made several trips to the general store where he rummaged through every little bottle and box on the storeroom shelves. He looked at perfumes and jewelry. No, this is all too expensive. He looked at chalk. Chalk! Who wants a piece of chalk for a present? The more he looked, the more baffled he became. The storekeeper, Mr. Martin, shot a disgruntled look at Benjy, saying he didn't like children messing up his merchandise. How can I help you find something? He finally asked in a very kind tone. No thanks. Benjy placed the can of powder back on the shelf. What would Sarah like? Maybe I should ask Ma. Arriving home, Benjy found Ma knitting beside the fireplace. Hey, Ma, I reckon you were a young girl once, Benjy said with a silly grin on his face. Well, yes, Benjy, I certainly was. What kind of Christmas gifts did you like? Ma raised her eyebrows and set her knitting aside. May I ask who this gift might be for? Well, Benjy dug his toe into the floorboard. I pulled Sarah Perkins' name in the gift exchange. Benjy could feel his face starting to turn warm. Wait right here. Benjy watched as Ma walked to the parlor. Benjy could see her lift a wooden box out of the buffet. She came back and sat down and opened the box. Inside were several delicately embroidered handkerchiefs. Ma pulled out the handkerchiefs. I've been saving these, Benjy. Do you think Sarah might like one? Oh, Ma, they're beautiful. But are you sure you don't want to keep them? You go right ahead and choose one. Which one should I choose? He picked up the first one, stitched with tiny yellow butterflies, but he wasn't sure that was the right one for Sarah. He fingered the one with soft pink roses, but again, he decided against it. Then he grabbed the one with pretty purple violets sewn along the edges. This one reminded him of spring, and somehow that reminded him of Sarah. The flowers smelled good, and Sarah always smelled like flowers. Gently, he held the white handkerchief with the violets in his hand and bent down and gave his mother a hug. Thanks, Ma, this one's perfect. Finally, he had a present for Sarah, and not just any present, it's the perfect present. Oh my, Ma. Something wrong? Ma held a brown woolen shawl. I've been knitting this for the elderly Mrs. Lillian. Reverend Yoder will deliver it soon to her. You know he has always takes special gifts to the shut-ins every Christmas time, and I promised to have this ready for him. Ma frowned. It looks like I'll need more wool, and the Christmas visits are being made in 2 days. I could stop by the general store for you after school tomorrow. Oh, that's all right, Benjy. I can walk into town. No! You just gave me the best handkerchief for Sarah, so it's the least I can do. You shouldn't have to walk all the way to town when I'm going to be there anyway. Ma smiled. You're such a good boy, Benjy. There's a sample of the yarn, so you'll know what is just the right color to buy. And Benjy, don't you go and forget to stop at that store. I'm in a mighty need of that yarn. It's snowing, Benjy said to Mutt when he woke up the next morning. I can't wait to go outside and play. After breakfast, Benjy pulled on his boots and started to trudge through the Sherwood forest to the schoolhouse. Wow, the snow on the tree branches bent them over. It looks like a tunnel in here. He made some snowballs and threw them at the trees as he trudged through the snow to the schoolhouse. As soon as he got there, Frankie greeted him. Look at all the snow, Frankie said. Recess is going to be the best ever. Benjy popped Frankie with a snowball, and Frankie threw an armful of snow at Benjy's head. As soon as they entered the school and hung up their coats and sat down, Miss Nettie made an announcement. I'm afraid recess will be indoors today due to the frigid weather, Miss Nettie said as if responding to Frankie. Oh, no, Benjy groaned. It's best if you all stay inside today, Miss Nettie said, sniffing and sneezing. I have a bad head cold, and I don't want to go outside today. At recess, in one corner of the schoolhouse, Benjy huddled with the older boys, shooting marbles. He glanced at the older girls, who spent their time giggling and braiding each other's hair, while the younger children played with cut-out paper dolls and trucks carved out of wood. At the end of the day, when Miss Nettie rang the dismissal bell, Benjy dashed to the coat rack. I'm tired of being cooped up all day. He no longer got out the door before a snowball thumped him on his back. Girls and boys, little and big, joined in the fun as snowballs flew in every direction. Benjy made a beeline to the nearest tree and ducked behind it, flinging snowballs as fast as he could make them. Yikes, I just hit Sarah! She wasn't very good at dodging dozens of hurling snowballs flying everywhere. Sarah, he called out, signaling to her to come over and take cover behind the tree. Thanks, Benjy. Sarah bolted behind the tree. You're such a gentleman. A gentleman? Me? Benjamin Clemens? His face burned with embarrassment and guilt. She obviously hadn't realized that one of those snowballs that hit her came from his hand. Should I apologize? Nah, why ruin a good thing? She thinks I'm a gentleman. I just don't want to see you get clobbered, that's all, Sarah. The snowball fight ended as one by one the children left for home. Benjy grabbed his books and lunch pail. He stuck his hand in his pockets and pulled out a piece of yarn. Oh no, Ma's yarn! He sprinted down the road into town and stopped cold in front of the general store. His stomach turned. His mouth dropped open as he stared at the sign on the front door. Closed. Benjy banged on the door, but no one answered. What will I tell Ma? He groaned. When he arrived home from school, his stomach was twisted in a knot, and he went looking for Ma. He found her mopping the floor. Ma, I'm so sorry. I forgot your yarn. I didn't mean to. There was a snowball fight, and, well, I just forgot. She sighed. I was counting on you, Benjy. I could have done it myself. Ma turned and walked back to the sink. Supper that night was painfully quiet. All Benjy could do was think. I really let Ma down. Following supper, he excused himself. I'm going to bed early. He lowered his head and climbed up the stairs. Even Mutt's wet, sloppy kisses at bedtime couldn't cheer him up. Benjy remembered old Albert talking about the Belsnickle whip, and he quivered at the thought of it striking him again and again. He prayed, Dear God, I reckon there ain't much more hope for the likes of me who lets down his own ma. If anyone is deserving of the Belsnickle whip, it's gotta be me. Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is a gift for Sarah. The next morning, Benjy peered over Ma's shoulder as she cracked open the oven door. His tummy rumbled at the smells oozing from the oven. Ma, you make the best gingerbread cookies ever. We make the best gingerbread cookies ever. Ma handed Benjy a cool plate of cookies so he could trim them with the frosting. Making the cookies together is one of my favorite Christmas traditions, Benjy grinned as he added a vest to one of the tasty cookies. Ma smiled as she mixed together another batch. Do you remember when you were 5 and we made the cookies? You got more icing on yourself than you did on the cookies. I'll save some more for you to decorate after school today. Benjy gave a sigh of relief that Ma no longer seemed upset or disappointed in him because he had forgotten to get the yarn from Miss Lillian's shawl. I sure did let her down, though. Pop had taken the old rusty pickup truck into town to get some supplies and picked up her yarn the next morning. Ma planned to finish that shawl later today. When it was time to leave for school, Benjy packed 3 gingerbread cookies in his lunch pail, one for himself, one for Sarah, and one for Miss Nettie, who was in a frenzy trying to keep the children's minds on their schoolwork. All the students had trouble concentrating, but Benjy was the worst one in the class. Benjamin, pay attention, Miss Nettie scolded him when he opened his book. Benjy just couldn't help himself. He continued to chat with the other children around him and ended up standing in the corner. And with the excitement of Christmas Eve drawing nearer, Benjy ended up standing in the corner several times that week, squirming away the minutes. The last day of school before Christmas vacation proved unbearable for Benjy. Miss Nettie held the long-awaited Christmas party. Benjamin's excitement could not be contained. Oh boy! Benjy helped himself to the chewy black walnut taffy and plump raisin-filled cookies that Miss Nettie brought to school for the special treat for her students. I can't wait to exchange gifts today. Benjy thought as he gnawed on some taffy. He slipped the hand inside his pocket and pulled out the package he had so carefully wrapped the night before. The card read, "To Sarah from Benjy." He placed the package tied with a golden ribbon beneath the tree. The rest of the children had already huddled around the tree, eager for Miss Nettie to start the gift exchange. "Move over a little," Benjy said to several of his classmates as he squeezed into a space where girls and boys sat cross-legged on the floor. "Are you ready, boys and girls?" Miss Nettie pulled up a chair and sat facing the children. Oohs and ahs erupted as the children wiggled in laughter. "Sarah Perkins," Miss Nettie announced, and Benjy's heart skipped a beat. Sarah reached out to retrieve the package Miss Nettie handed her. Benjy watched as Sarah pulled the card from the envelope, read it, and glanced in his direction. Benjy smiled sheepishly as his cheeks burned and his heart raced double time. She slowly and carefully removed each piece of tape from the paper. She seemed to take forever, and Benjy watched restlessly. "Just rip it open already." At last, Sarah lifted the lid of the box and held up the beautiful handkerchief with the purple violets. "Oh," Sarah said and smiled at Benjy, sending a strange flippy-floppy feeling to his belly. "She likes it. She really likes my present." "Frankie, this one's for you," Miss Nettie said. Frankie ripped the paper apart to reveal a new wooden yo-yo. He immediately stood up and tried dangling the string up and down. Next, Peggy, a younger girl, opened up a set of watercolor paints, which brought a big smile to her face. "Benjamin," Miss Nettie said, "do you want your package?" Benjy watched Sarah so intently he didn't hear Miss Nettie call his name. "Benjamin!" He took the package and saw it was from Joshua, and eagerly ripped aside the wrappings. Wow, a flute whittled out of wood. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Benjy blew into the whittled wood and played a few lovely notes. Joshua stood up and danced a jig. The whole class laughed. "What a great gift! Thank you, Joshua. Old Albert can teach me how to play a real song." Each child eagerly untied his present until the last gift was opened. Digging into more cookies, the children watched as Miss Nettie unwrapped the handmade Christmas ornaments she had received from her students. "Thank you, everyone," Miss Nettie said. "I will have the prettiest tree around." Ding dong, ding dong. Miss Nettie then rang the dismissal bell. Christmas vacation officially began, with Benjy tugging on his coat and hat and heading for Sherwood Forest, glistening with heavy fallen snow. "Benjy, wait up!" Sarah ran to catch him. "I couldn't let you get away without saying thank you for the beautiful handkerchief. You really liked it? I love it. I'll see you at the Christmas Eve service tomorrow night." Sarah smiled and ran off. Arriving home in somewhat of a daze, Benjy shook himself back to his senses and stomped the slush off his boots by the front door. All through supper, he kept his eyes focused on the window. Watching the snow coming down in a blanket of white, he gulped down every last bite of scrapple and molasses. "Reckon we'll have to make it to the Christmas Eve services tomorrow, right, Pop?" "Sure, son, but I don't think our old pickup truck is going to make it through the snow. It looks like it'll be a great time to hitch up the high sleigh." "Wow, a sleigh ride? I loved sleigh rides." "Me too," Ma grinned and began clearing away the dishes. Snow continued all night and into the next day. Toward evening, when Pop slid on his coat and pulled on his boots, Benjy ran to grab his own coat and boots. "You needin' any help, Ma?" "You go on ahead and help Pop with the sleigh." Outside, Benjy and Pop grasped the handles, pulling open the heavy wooden barn doors. They led Clover and Buckwheat to the sleigh. Benjy layered fresh hay inside the sleigh's bed. He grabbed a couple of heavy blankets and tossed them onto the hay. I suppose there are a lot of little ones worrying about Santa Claus making his way through the snow tonight, Benjy said. Pop chuckled. I imagine there are a lot of others praying that the Belsnickle doesn't make it through either. Benjy gulped. What did you say about the Belsnickle? You know all about that horrid creature with his bells and his whip that makes visits on Christmas Eve. Wide-eyed, Benjy said, I reckon you'd have to be pretty bad to get a visit from that Belsnickle guy, wouldn't you say? I reckon so, son. I reckon so. Hurry now. We best be getting dressed for church. You go on ahead, Pop. I'll catch up in a few minutes. Benjy felt like the weight of the woodpile had tumbled down on him. Until now, he had convinced himself that the Belsnickle wouldn't be making a stop at his house. But Pop had come right out and reminded him that the Belsnickle would be on the move tonight. Benjy's stomach churned. I'm in a heap of trouble. A feeling of gloom came over him as he forced himself to go back inside. I gotta get ready for church, Mutt. I'd sooner just hide under the bed until tomorrow's Christmas dinner is ready. Dressed and ready to go, he found the sleigh waiting. Benjy helped Ma step up and take her seat beside Pop. He found himself a spot deep in the corner of the sleigh's bed and sank down into the hay. Pop circled the neighborhood, offering a hayride to anyone who needed it. The sleigh soon filled with chattering churchgoers spreading Christmas cheer. Benjy sank deeper into the hay. All this chatter is getting on my nerves. After all, I'm trying to do some serious thinking. Benjy shivered, but not from the cold. He thought about all the pranks he had pulled during the past year. Miss Nettie and the pig's tail, the smoky schoolhouse, and most of all, the pepper soup. I'd be aware of a visit from the Belsnickle if I were you. Miss Nettie's words came back to haunt him. Whoa! Pop called to the horses, bringing Benjy back to reality. Clover and Buckwheat came to a halt in front of the little white church nestled in the snow. The church's steeple reminded Benjy of a huge, pointy icicle reaching for the heavens. Blue, green, and orange reflections danced across the snow where the light filtered through the stained glass. A sense of peace warmed over Benjy's hopeless soul. People packed the pews, and members of the church portrayed the Nativity, reminding Benjy of the true meaning of Christmas. Spotting Sarah, Benjy fidgeted in his seat and strained his neck to stare at her. A warm flush crept up around his neck and ears. He lowered his head so no one would notice. Pay attention. Ma gave Benjy a slight poke to the ribs with her elbow. After the Reverend read the Christmas story, and they spent an hour singing hymns, the service ended with the congregation standing to sing Benjy's favorite hymn, Silent Night. His voice croaked and squeaked, but for the first time in weeks, he sang at the top of his lungs, not caring what the others might think. Reverend Yoder ended with, Bless you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and Merry Christmas to all. The parishioners rose and flowed out of the candlelit church. Outside, the deepening snow prevented neighbors and friends from lingering too long. After climbing into the sleigh, Pop retraced the sleigh's tracks, dropping off passengers who said their goodnights and wished each other a Merry Christmas. Benjy soon sat alone again in the back of the sleigh. An icy chill froze the peace he had once felt. He shook as fear gripped him. Will that dreaded Belsnickle really come calling? Will Mutt protect me from him? I don't really want to know. He pulled the heavy blanket over his head and sank down into the hay as far as he could go. Chapter 11. Rap, rap, rap. Arriving home after church on Christmas Eve, Pop brought the sleigh to a stop by the barn. Little by little, Benjy crawled out from beneath the hay, brushed off his shoulders, and jumped to the ground. He helped Pop unhitch the sleigh and bed down Buckwheat and Clover for the night. Pop, if it's okay with you, I'm going to turn in for the night. Go ahead, Benjy. I'll be right behind you. Benjy escaped to the refuge of his bedroom, where he roamed back and forth across the floor. Why did Pop have to bring up that Belsnickle tonight of all nights? Mutt, I am so jittery I can't stop my body from shaking. Mutt stared at Benjy's shuffling feet until Benjy finally plopped onto the bed and pulled the covers over his head. Mutt burrowed beneath the covers and edged his way next to the trembling Benjy. Benjy pulled Mutt closer. You'll protect me, won't you, Mutt? Just let that spooky old Belsnickle try to get past you. Mutt whined as if he knew how scared Benjy felt, and even though Mutt snuggled close by his side, sleep came hard that night. Benjy tossed and turned and punched his pillow and fists again and again into his feather pillow. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the beating of the clock thumped in Benjy's ears. He continued to hear it late into the night, until he at last drifted into a fitful sleep. Riddled with nightmares, he clung to the covers. His breath quickened. He swatted back the shadows that threatened to yank him from his bed. Menacing hands reaching out of nowhere, determined to sweep him into a hazy gloom. This all invaded his dreams. He shook himself awake, hugging Mutt tighter. He relaxed and eventually settled into a trance-like sleep. Sometime during the night, Benjy woke again to Mutt's low, graspy growls. Quiet, boy, Benjy scolded and glanced from corner to corner of the eerie room to assure himself that the shadows held no threat. Grrr, grrr. Mutt's persistent growling prompted Benjy to land a quick, gentle kick against Mutt's backside. Settle down! Instead, Mutt's growls grew louder. Benjy bolted upright, his ears homed in to a sound. He cupped his ear and listened more closely. Sure enough, he heard a definite rapping on the parlor door. Rap, 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 rap. Benjy fought to still his throbbing heart. His every instinct urged him to dive deeper beneath the covers and pretend the sound wasn't real. Rap, 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 rap. Benjy couldn't deny the noise that had floated to the top of the stairs, where he sat quivering in his bed. I hope Mutt settles down. He's going to wake Ma and Pa, and if the rapping doesn't stir them first, I must face the Belsnickle. I'd rather Ma and Pa never know. Benjy dragged himself inch by inch out of the bed. Come on, Mutt. You're going with me. Mutt buried his nose between his paws and whined like a newborn pup. Benjy pushed and tugged until Mutt plunged down onto the hardwood floor from the bed. Benjy grabbed his baseball bat, ready to swing if anything got in his way. I gotta protect myself. Mutt's no help. Creak, creak. Step by step, he dragged Mutt along with him down the squeaking stairs. Surely any minute Ma and Pa would be hot on his trail. On the final step, he turned and checked the upstairs landing and breathed a sigh of relief. No Ma, no Pa at the top of the stairs. Oh Lord, please protect me. Benjy walked through the kitchen until he reached the parlor door, and then with a quivering hand he slowly turned the knob. He edged the door open a hair and felt the cold wind whisk through the partially open doorway. A huge gush of wind caught the door and flung it wide open, knocking Benjy backwards. Dead straight ahead in the doorway, a mysterious creature almost blended in with the black of the night. Mutt needed only one look. With his tail tucked between his legs, he scampered across the floor and planted himself solidly beneath the parlor table. Benjy inched backward, but soon collided with a chair that stopped him dead in his tracks. He longed with his heart to join Mutt beneath the table. Pop had been right. The Belsnickle was the oddest creature he had ever seen. He wasn't as tall as Benjy imagined. Instead, he looked rather short and stout and round as he was tall. He wore a long black coat, thick black boots, and black leather gloves. Worst of all, chimney soup blackened his face. A malicious grin revealed several blackened teeth. Benjy's teeth chattered. His eyes drifted from the Belsnickle's face to the horsewhip that he clutched in his hand. He seemed ready to use the whip at a moment's notice. In the other hand, he held a Glock and a ragged paper scroll. Every detail of the Belsnickle's dress hypnotized Benjy, but the thing he found most frightening was the hideous hat that crowned the Belsnickle's head. Porcupine quills jutted from the black hat, and the slightest jerk of his head set off a tingling of little bells tucked underneath the hat's brim. "You Benjamin Clemens?" The Belsnickle commanded voice broke Benjy free of his hypnotic spell. "Yes, Mr. Belsnickle, sir," Benjy whispered. His eyes were riveted to the sinister-looking horsewhip. Unraveling his scroll, the Belsnickle recited a list of Benjy's pranks and bad behavior over the last year. Benjy cringed. "There was an incident, I believe, involving Miss Nettle and a pig's tail," roared the Belsnickle. Beads of sweat trickled down Benjy's brow, and a clever but naughty trick that locked Miss Nettle out of the schoolhouse. "Geez, I didn't even get to play that baseball that day." Benjy's hand shook so forcefully the bat dropped out of his hand and landed at the Belsnickle feet. And there was the matter of the little snake. It's not nice to scare other children. Tears began to form in Benjy's eyes. "And let's not forget the clogging of the stovepipe. That's a dangerous thing to do, don't you think?" Benjy nodded. "And I'm sure you will recall the broken promise you made to your ma." "Shoot, he even knows about the yarn." Benjy's teeth chattered even louder, and salty tears flowed down his cheeks. He closed his eyes and prepared himself for the fiery sting of the whip. He waited, but the expected lash never came. He opened his eyes to find the Belsnickle tucking the ragged scroll beneath his arm. "Young man, you have pulled more pranks in 1 year than I have ever seen before. You have a mighty good imagination, but your acts were all added to my list of ornery behaviors. It seems to me you've been mighty bad this year." "I didn't mean to cause so much trouble," Benjy wiped the tears on his sleeve. The Belsnickle's voice shook with anger. "I've come to give you fair warning that I will be watching you night and day. You must promise here and now to do better, or I will be back again next year." He ended his tirade with a shocking crack of the whip alongside Benjy's trembling feet, just missing the tips of his toes. "I promise, sir, you have my word." "Well then, I suggest you learn how to behave. Pay attention in school and listen to your parents, and no more pranks. Is that understood?" "Yes, Mr. Belsnickle." Benjy's muscles were frozen. "Now get up on to bed, and be sure to take that fraidy cat dog along with you." "Yes, sir," but Benjy stood like a statue. He watched the Belsnickle reach for the doorknob, pause, and then turn and shove his hand deep into his pocket. A wicked grin appeared on the Belsnickle's blackened face. What now? Has he changed his mind and plans a real lashing of the whip? Benjy stiffened his body against the anticipated blow. The Belsnickle pulled his hand from his pocket. Benjy slapped his hands over his eyes and peeked through the cracks between his fingers, waiting for the worst thing ever to happen in his short young life. Instead, the Belsnickle scattered a handful of candies and nuts on the floor. Benjy blinked, not believing his eyes. He stared in disbelief as the Belsnickle tipped his jingling hat, chortled a high-pitched cackle, and disappeared into the night. Chapter 12. Your son asked my name. My name is Nikki, or Moonu Midnight. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo. That pesky rooster woke me up. Benjy yawned and stretched and groaned, and then shot straight up in the bed. Wait, glory be, it's Christmas morning! Mutt licked Benjy's face. Benjy then buried his head into Mutt's fur to dry off the doggy drool. The savory aroma of turkey roasting on the cook stove drifted up the stairway. Benjy rubbed his hand over his hungry belly. He glanced at the bedside table where a handful of nuts and candies still waited to be eaten. It really wasn't a dream. Horsewhip or candies? I reckon the Belsnickle gave me a choice, and I best keep my promise to do better from now on. I sure hope I can live up to my end of the bargain. Benjy scooped up the goodies and stashed them beneath the pile of folded overalls stacked in his drawer. He shuddered at the thought of the Belsnickle's horsewhip snapping at his feet. Ain't no way this candy is going to taste good this morning. Then a smile formed on Benjy's lips. Of course, later, when I'm more awake, it might taste just fine. That's when he noticed his stocking hanging on his bedroom chair. He dug his hand down into the stocking's bottom and plucked out an orange. Benjy held the orange to his nose and took a big whiff. He smelled its sweetness and then stuffed it in his pocket for later. He dashed down the stairs, glancing under the Christmas tree to the corner of the room. He didn't see anything. Good morning, Ma. Merry Christmas. Benjy gave his ma a big hug. Breakfast was waiting. He was gulping down his last bite of hotcakes when a loud rap sounded on the door. Oh no, it can't be the Belsnickle again, can it? Benjy cracked open the door and peered outside. To his relief, Pop entered the room with an armload of firewood. Although bone-tired, Benjy offered to give Pop a hand. No need, son, I got plenty of wood for the day. But you might want to have a look underneath that Christmas tree. Benjy thought Pop was joking, but he slowly stepped towards the tree and searched beneath the branches. He pushed some branches aside, but he didn't see anything. Then he got down on his belly and wiggled underneath the tree. Benjy's heart pounded. I think I see something. He stretched his arms as far as he could, way under the tree, and grabbed onto some kind of box. Then he wiggled back out from underneath, tightly gripping his find in one arm. Benjy stared at the present. My name's on it. Go on and open it, Ma said. Benjy fidgeted with the box. He wondered how his folks would feel if they knew about last night's visit from the Belsnickle. Reckon I don't rightly deserve to be rewarded. Well, son, are we going to get to see what's inside that box or not? Benjy untied the wrappings and proudly displayed a brand new pair of black leather ice skates. We knew your old pair was getting plenty tight, Ma hugged Benjy. You've grown so much in the last year. Benjy wrapped his arms around Ma and Pa. You're the best folks a fella could ever have. Benjy, let's go so Ma can get back to preparing our Christmas dinner. He tried on his new skates and admired the way they looked on his feet before putting them back in the box. Feeling tired, Benjy laid down on the sofa, thinking about gliding with the slick ice. Benjy nodded off and on. The visit from the Belsnickle late last night wore me down. Sometime later, he was still dozing when he heard someone knocking on the door. Who could that be? Go open the door, Benjy, Ma grinned from ear to ear. Benjy flung open the door. Old Albert, Benjy yelled. Hey, Ma, hey, Pa, look, it's my best fishing buddy, old Albert. We know he's our guest for Christmas. In fact, the feast is ready to be eaten. Hurry, old Albert, come inside. Benjy gave him a hearty handshake. Everyone gathered around the table. Minutes later, Pop said the prayer of thanks, and then Benjy stabbed a bite of turkey, stuffing it with his fork, and shoved it into his mouth. Ma, this is the best tasting Christmas dinner ever. I second that, old Albert said as he rubbed his stomach. Benjy said the same thing every year, and Ma always grinned and said, "Why, thank you, Benjy." This time she added, "And thank you too, old Albert. We're so glad that you could come for dinner." After dinner, Benjy showed old Albert his shiny new skates. "I have something for you and your folks." Old Albert handed a wrapped gift to Benjy. Benjy pulled off the wrappings to reveal a box of chocolates. "Can I have one now?" "How about we all have one?" Pop said. "Thank you so much, old Albert," Ma said. "What a thoughtful present." Shortly after lunch, Benjy became restless. "Pop, would you mind if I go and try out my new skates?" Pop grinned. "I figured you'd want to go, so I checked the ice earlier this morning to make sure it was frozen solid. You go ahead and have yourself a good time, but ask one of your friends to go along with you. We don't want you skating alone." "Old Albert, you promised to stay and have some coffee and another piece of pumpkin pie." "Sounds mighty good," old Albert grinned. After putting on his warmest skating clothes, Benjy slung his skates over his shoulder and headed out the door. Walking along, he thought about asking Daniel to come with him. Then he thought maybe Joshua would want to come too. Sure, would be nice to have some company. He began thinking about one special friend. At the fork in the road, Benjy followed the grooves in the snow left by last night's sleigh ride. Before he knew it, he was standing at Sarah's front door. A hard rap brought Mr. Perkins to the front door where Benjy stood. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Perkins. Is Sarah home?" "Well, hello, Benjamin, and a very Merry Christmas to you. Come on inside." Mr. Perkins opened the door for Benjy to pass through. Sarah set aside her needlework when Benjy entered the room. "Merry Christmas, Benjy." "Merry Christmas, Sarah. Thought maybe you'd like to go skating this afternoon. My pop already checked the ice and he said it's safe." Sarah looked at her father and he nodded. Sarah jumped out of her chair. "Sure, Benjy, let me go get my skates." "Wait a minute," Mr. Perkins said. "You young folks need to be really careful. Sarah, you need to be home before dark." Sarah ran off and returned all bundled up in her winter gear with her skates slung over her shoulder. "Remember," said Mr. Perkins as he walked them out the door, "stay together, don't skate alone, and be home before dark." "Wait," called Mrs. Perkins. "Before you go, I have some extra hot potatoes to help keep your hands warm." Mrs. Perkins scurried to the kitchen and returned with 4 hot baked potatoes, each wrapped in a cloth. She stuffed them into Sarah and Benjy's coat pockets. "That forest is so thick. I hate to think of you walking through it alone, Benjy. Will you make sure Sarah gets home safely?" "Yes, Miss Perkins, I promise." And Sarah and Benjy went out the door to traipse through the woods. "I got these new skates for Christmas." "From my mom and pa," Benjy said. "Did you get anything special?" "I got a new embroidery hoop and a pattern with threads the colors of a rainbow." "Well, that's nice," Benjy mumbled. All he could think about was last night. He felt tempted to confide in Sarah his deepest, darkest secret, the visit from the Belsnickle. He pushed aside a big tree branch. His stomach turned. "I just can't take the chance that she might think less of me." Then he pulled his orange from his pocket and offered to share it with Sarah. "Why, Benjy, that's so nice of you. Are you sure? You don't have to share it with me." Benjy handed Sarah some slices from the orange and then popped a slice in his mouth. "Oranges are my favorite," Benjy said. "Too bad we only get one at Christmas time." Ducking under some low limbs, they soon came to an opening near the fishing hole. They heard the squeals and giggles of other children. A bunch of their schoolmates glided across the ice. Benjy and Sarah sat on the ground and quickly laced up their skates. "It sure does feel good to have new skates that don't pinch my toes," Benjy said. Sarah laughed, and they planted their skates on the ice. Around and around the pond they glided like birds in flight. "Hey, looky there! If it ain't those yellow-bellied chickens from Landisburg schoolhouse!" Bruce Yeager yelled, standing alongside his buddies from the Red Bank schoolhouse. "Go home before we beat you in hockey again." "Who are those boys?" Sarah's voice quivered. "Just a bunch of guys looking for a fight," Benjy said. Sarah's eyes grew wide as she backed away. "Don't worry, Sarah. They're just hankering for a good hockey game. They beat us every year and love rubbing in their victories." "Well, Clemens, what do you say? Are you ready for another beating?" Bruce held up a brand new Mic-Mac hockey stick. Benjy looked at his school pals. "Let's get 'em," the boys hollered. "We're ready when you are." Benjy pulled a hockey stick so worn it was held together with mere tape. Some of the players grabbed extra brooms used to sweep away the snow from the ice. Others had sticks from the forest with club-like stubs at the end. A frozen horse drop served the puck. Quickly, the little kids and Sarah and the other girls headed to the far end of the pond, safely away from the clacking hockey sticks. Bruce whacked the puck towards the Landisburg goal, but it slid to the tips of Sarah's skates before she had time to reach the other side of the pond. "Oh, I'm not picking up that yucky puck." Sarah hurried along with the others. Benjy protected the goal as his teammates made a mad dash for the puck and swept it away with his taped-up stick. Bruce lunged for the puck. "Ha ha! You Landisburg guys don't stand a chance." But for the first time in years, the Landisburg boys had the edge. Daniel slid the puck across the ice to Joshua, who raced towards it. He captured it and glided it over to Frankie, who was circling Red Bank's goal. The stick slammed the puck into the net. "Yay!" the Landisburg boys yelled, keeping their lead. An hour later, the game dragged on. The sun drifted closer to the horizon. Benjy ignored Sarah's shouts and waving arms. He shook his head to silence her dad's request to have her home before dark. "We're winning! I can't leave now!" But Sarah continued to wave and shout until he skated to her side. "It's late, Benjy. I really should be getting home," Sarah warned with her hands on her cheeks. "Come on, Benjy. Let's get back in the game," Daniel pleaded. "Don't let some sissy girl get in the way of a game." Joshua hollered and waved. "Benjy's getting weak-kneed over a girl." "We're ahead, Sarah. Just one more minute and we're sure to win the game." Benjy glanced back at the boys. "You go on ahead. I'll catch up as soon as we win the game." He dug the tip of his skate into the ice and zigzagged away. Sarah took off her skates and threw them over her shoulder and started for home. Several feet from the ice, she turned and caught Benjy's eye. Mouth tight, she lowered her eyes and shook her head. "What should I do? If I pull out of the game, I'll let the guys down. But if I stay, I'll be breaking my promise to Sarah's mother and father. Why do things always get so complicated?" Benjy muttered. Benjy looked at the boys. The game had stopped. They had all stared at him. He looked back at Sarah, then back again at the boys. Benjy dug his skates into the ice, and off he skated. He hesitated, then skated to the bank. "Hey, Benjy, where you going?" Daniel yelled. "I got a promise to keep." Benjy sat down, unlaced his skates, pulled on his boots, and stood, tossing his skates over his shoulder. He darted down the path. His boots thudded as he ran to catch up with Sarah. A girl shouldn't be walking home alone. It will soon be dark, you know. Sarah stared at him for a long time, then smiled. Benjy knew he was forgiven. He couldn't help but hope that wherever the Belsnickle might be, he was smiling too. Chapter 13, Valentine's Day. The first day back to school after Christmas vacation. Frankie greeted Benjy with a shout. "Hey, Benjy, we beat them guys. We beat those Red Bank schoolhouse bullies." "I knew you guys could do it." Benjy slapped Frankie on the back on his way up the steps. I just wish I could have stayed to finish the game." Back in the classroom, the students sat down at their desks. Long before Benjy squirmed in his chair, almost falling out of it, as Miss Nettie attempted to get her students back into the routine of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Benjy yawned, and his mind drifted to snowball fights, ice skating, sled riding, and Sarah. "The room sure looks bigger with the Christmas tree and decorations all gone. Not much to look forward to now except snow, snow, and more snow." January seemed to last forever, but February brought with it the excitement of Valentine's Day. The children in all the grades participated by making valentines to give each other. It normally wasn't a big deal, but this year there was Sarah. Miss Nettie always made a big fuss over that particular holiday. Benjy figured she knew her students needed something to look forward to besides cold weather and blustery snow. Valentine's Day is only a week away, and we need to plan our party. You can use the art supplies in the closet with the paper and the ribbon and the string and other things you might find at home. I wrote the list of the students' names on the blackboard. Please copy the list so every student makes a card for every other student in our school. I will provide a list of student names for the younger children to take home to their parents. What about you, Miss Nettie? Miss Nettie smiled. Well, of course you can give me valentines too if you wish. Sarah, I'm going to put you in charge of decorating our Valentine's card box. But all of the other students can help too by making a small heart to paste onto the box. We'll make it real nice. Sarah filled her face with a smile. Daniel's mother offered to bring us cake for the party we have at the end of the day. Miss Nettie said, and Lucy's mother is bringing punch and popcorn to have with our cake. I can't wait, Frankie said. I hope it's chocolate with lots of frosting. And all the children giggled. You may all place your Valentine cards into the box as soon as it's ready. It'll be ready real soon, Sarah assured her. Miss Nettie sat at her desk and opened a book. Now pay attention. Our 6th graders will be having a history test, so everyone needs to be quiet. Boo, said Benjy, and it was echoed by the other 6th grade boys. The others just smiled at the boys who were being so silly. Miss Nettie wagged her finger at the boys. As for everyone else, you may read your library books or draw pictures as long as you keep quiet until the test is over. 6th grade students, including the fidgety Benjy, grabbed their pencils and sat erect as Miss Nettie handed out their test papers. You have 30 minutes to complete the test. Benjy glanced at the test and fidgeted some more. He had read all his lessons and somehow found time to study, but his hands always got sweaty just before a test. Luckily, he began answering the questions and realized that he knew most of the answers, and his hands got a little less clammy. With the test finished, the children went outside for recess and played in the snow. Hey, let's play being measured, Benjy said. Only if you go first, Frankie said. I'll go first. Benjy took his place standing with his back against the woodshed. The rest of the students crunched and packed the snow together with their hands to make snowballs and lined up. They took turns throwing them at Benjy, carefully aiming them to hit the woodshed as close to his head as they could possibly do without hitting him. The first person to hit Benjy with a snowball would have to trade places with him and become the new target. I wonder who will hit me first. Benjy watched a dozen snowballs land beside his head, arms, stomach, and legs. Unfortunately for Sarah, her snowball is the one that hit Benjy smack in the nose. Benjy didn't want Sarah to have to face the hurling snowballs, but she bravely exchanged places and stood firm. The children threw snowballs and laughed and got soaked as one of the students after another ended up being the target. Benjy was up next. Ding dong! Woo, saved by the bell, Benjy said. Back at his desk, Benjy squirmed once again. I have your history tests all graded, Miss Nettie said. I will hand them back to you now, and we'll go over the answers. The rest of the children can listen to the questions and the correct answers. When Benjy got his test paper, he was pleased to see that he had gotten a B. Wow, I guess paying attention in class really does pay off. That's the best score I've had in a really long time. I hope that means old Belsnickle knows I'm trying to keep my end of the bargain. Miss Nettie praised Benjy at the end of the week for not needing to stand in the corner. Benjy spent his weekend making funny Valentine cards for his schoolmates. He pondered the most over Sarah's Valentine, but he couldn't come up with something nice enough. Once again, Ma came to the rescue. Benjy kept crumbling up paper until Benjy showed him a sheet of leftover wrapping paper. It was speckled and had pretty blue flowers on it. Why don't you use this to cut out a heart and we'll add some lace and ribbon to it? That would be great. Sarah will like the blue flowers on the paper and I could write Happy Valentine's Day on the back. Working together, Benjy and Ma came up with a beautiful card for Sarah. Gee, thanks, Ma. I guess it's no secret that I kinda like Sarah, Benjy smirked. Ma laughed. I never would have guessed. When Valentine's Day arrived, lots of snow and ice still covered the ground. So Miss Nettie decided to treat the children to another surprise. They would make homemade ice cream. They would use the excess snow and ice to keep the ice cream maker cold, while the students took turns cranking the handle. The Valentine box bulged with cards. The cake, punch, and popcorn had arrived, and the children collected buckets of snow and ice for the ice cream maker. The ice cream was made outside in the cold, and every child would get a chance to help turn the crank. When the cranking became so hard that neither Benjy nor Daniel could turn it, Miss Nettie removed the ice cream canister and filled with creamy vanilla ice cream to go with Daniel's chocolate cake. The children brought their bowls outside, each receiving a large spoonful of ice cream before scurrying back to the warm schoolhouse. Yum, this sure is tasty, Frankie said, stuffing his mouth with cake and ice cream. After the treats, Miss Nettie got the box of Valentines and distributed them to the students. Benjy's card for Sarah was too big for the slit in the box, so he had tucked it away in his lunch pail. Wow, look at this beautiful Valentine. One of the younger girls jumped up and down staring at the card. Soon every student buzzed with excitement, showing their cards to one another. With everyone so busy, Benjy took the opportunity to retrieve Sarah's card and slap it onto her desk. Sarah, who was showing Lucy her different Valentines, didn't notice the card on her desk until Miss Nettie called for the children to quiet down and take their seats. I wonder if she's going to open it. Oh, there she goes. She found it. Sarah opened the card and immediately turned towards Benjy. She gave him the biggest, brightest smile he had ever seen, and his heart did backflips. Benjy smiled back and quite sure he had a dopey look on his face. He glanced around to make sure none of the guys were looking at him. Then he stared at Sarah some more. Open yours, Miss Nettie, Lucy said. Miss Nettie sat at her desk and one by one opened all the Valentines from each student. There were cards with hearts, teddy bears, monkeys, puppy dogs, and lots of flowers. Before we dismiss for the day, please come up and everyone take a bag of candy hearts, Miss Nettie said. Wow, candy! I wish every day was Valentine's Day, Frankie said. Miss Nettie rang the dismissal bell, and the children lined up to get their candy. Miss Nettie even got hugs from the younger children. When Benjy reached Miss Nettie's desk, she grinned so hard that her cheeks puffed up. "Thank you for the beautiful card, Benjamin." Not only had Benjy made Sarah a card, he had made one for Miss Nettie too, and it said, "Best Teacher." Wow, I don't know what's got into me, but it kind of feels good for a change. Benjy smiled. "You're welcome, Miss Nettie." Chapter 14, The Spelling Bee. The remaining weeks of winter seemed to last forever, with the new batches of blustery white snowflakes filling the sky. Some days were too cold to be outside on the playground, so the children had to be content with themselves playing indoors. Benjy missed playing baseball and meeting old Albert at the fishing hole. Is spring ever gonna get here? Finally, one day, Miss Nettie marked the date in big letters on the chalkboard, March 21st. "Children, you may all go outside for recess today. And because it's so nice out, I'm giving you an extra 10 minutes to play." "Hurrah!" the students shouted, jumping out of their seats and rushing out the door. That very day, Benjy was just about to take his turn at bat during the first baseball game of the year when he heard a familiar sound. Honk, honk, honk. "Look, everybody!" Benjy pointed to the sky where a flock of geese passed overhead in a V formation. "Now that's a sure sign that spring is a sight to behold." March soon passed into April, and the weather turned even milder. Finally, I can meet old Albert at the fishing hole again. On the first day of May, Miss Nettie announced to the class, "Only 4 more weeks of school." Benjy found those last 4 weeks grueling. Miss Nettie assigned homework every day, and especially spelling words. At home, sitting in the kitchen table, Benjy spelled words over and over again as Ma drilled them into him. Ma sat a glass of milk and a plate of oatmeal raisin cookies next to Benjy. "Thanks for the milk and cookies, Ma, and for helping me practice all of these words. Miss Nettie is always reminding us of the end of the year spelling bee. Is it going to be held at the church or here in Landisburg again this year? And is it on a Saturday after the last day of school?" "Yep," Benjy said, "and we're going to beat those kids from the Red Bank schoolhouse real bad this year." He gulped down a swallow of milk and helped himself to another cookie. "You mind Miss Nettie now," Mom grinned. "She's a mighty good teacher, and you can never learn too many words." "Yes, Ma." Benjy rubbed his head as if that would make his spelling stick. I'm trying real hard." "How many words does Miss Nettie expect us to learn?" Benjy moaned to Joshua at school all about the spelling homework that they were given each night. "Yeah," Joshua groaned back, "and I'm getting tired of making all these silly spelling signs." Each day, Miss Nettie continued to remind them about the big day. Joshua groaned back, "and I'm getting tired of making all these silly spelling signs." Each day, Miss Nettie continued to remind them about the big day. The children made welcome signs and streamers to hang up in the church to greet the parents of the students who would be coming to participate in the spelling bee challenge. Benjy didn't care much about the spelling bee, but he sure looked forward to a day with lots of outdoor games. And Ma always packed him a great lunch for the picnic that the students held that day. But first they had to learn hundreds of spelling words. "Attention!" Miss Nettie called for her students to sit up straight. "All of you know the spelling bee will be held this Saturday, May 28th, right here in our very own church. Please be there on time. We will meet here at the schoolhouse at 10 a.m., and then we will all walk to the church together." The children turned in their desks, chatting to one another about the special games that they would play that day and the picnic lunch that they would have outside. "Class, attention please!" Miss Nettie's voice grew louder. I have chosen the names of the students who will represent us in this year's spelling bee. Each of these students will face a competitor from the Red Bank School. First grade is Lindsay Stauffer. Second grade will be Michael Humbach. Third grade will be Esther Farley. Fourth grade will be Kevin Swineford. And the fifth grade will be Emma Stoner. You forgot sixth grade, Miss Nettie. Oh dear, now how could I have done that? Miss Nettie shuffled her papers and cleared her throat. This year's representative in the sixth grade category will be Benjamin Clemens. Complete with utter silence filled the room. With mouths gaping and eyeballs bulging, every head turned towards Benjy. What? You cannot be serious, Miss Nettie. Are you sure you haven't made a mistake? Sarah's much better speller than me. Yes, Benjy, I am quite sure. Miss Nettie's face took on a serious look. I suggest you clamp down on your studying. Studying? He groaned. I'm already tired of studying. Nonetheless, Benjy found himself practicing every spelling word that he could possibly pronounce, and even some that he couldn't. Time flew by, and before Benjy knew it, the big spelling bee day had arrived. Early that morning, he sat pushing scrambled eggs around on his plate. You really should eat something, Benjy. I just can't. There's an army of grasshoppers thumping around in my belly. He held his stomach and shook his head. I guess I might as well just go to school. Your pop and I will be there shortly along with Mr. Albert. Ma handed him a small picnic basket. I made cherry cobbler for you, dear. I know it's one of your favorites. Thanks, Ma. Benjy hoped that he would find his appetite for later that day. Walking through the Sherwood forest his way to school, he stopped by the fishing hole and skipped a few stones across the water. He listened to the bullfrogs croaking. I was checking my battery, lost my spot. Hold on. He listened to the bullfrogs croaking their throaty melodies. Before he knew it, he heard the clanging of the schoolhouse bell. Oh, I feel sick. I'd rather go home and hide in the barn until this spelling bee is over. Then a strange noise. The Belsnickle's glocks, jingling in his head. What brought that on after all this time? He didn't know, and he didn't care. He decided right then and there to hurry to that schoolhouse before arriving late. Benjy raced through the woods and climbed the school steps. He bumped right into Sarah. Good luck, Benjy, she said. No matter what happens, let's have our picnic lunch together after the match is over. Wow, the grasshoppers are really jumping around again. No wonder. No matter what happens, these were Sarah's exact words. Benjy nodded. I'm lucky to have you for a friend. By mid-morning, students and parents from both schools jammed inside the church, and Miss Nettie looked like she could float with glee. Good morning, and welcome to our spelling bee, Miss Nettie said with a flutter in her voice. Students sat elbow to elbow in the front pews. Would all of the 12 contestants please step forward and take your places? The two first graders were asked to stand, and the competition had begun. Minute by minute ticked by, and the words bounced back and forth between the two contestants until Benjy and his opponent were the last to remain in the competition. I can't believe I'm still in the running. Benjy wanted more than anything to either join the other 3 first-place winners or the second-place winners from his school. Go, Benjy, go! His classmates cheered him on. Another 20 minutes passed. Benjy spelled so many words, including decision, apprehension, comedy, resident, greenhouse, joyful, and permanent. Time for recess to give our 2 scholars a chance to rest their minds, Miss Nettie called. Phew, my brain hurts. Benjy tapped his forehead and followed the crowd outside. The children ran, stretched, and played in the church picnic grove. But Benjy wanted some peace and quiet and finally found a place to perch on an old tree stump. "Are you all right?" Sarah came and stood by his side. "Sure, I'm okay. Just thinking that maybe winning ain't really that important." "You've done a great job already. We're all so proud of you." "Thanks, Sarah." Benjy couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, he didn't feel so wiped out anymore. When the church bell rang, he marched up the steps, determined to get through this final round. Sure enough, the first word that was given to Benjy, spell soldier. Miss Nettie looked at Benjy. Soldeir. Benjy almost whispered the word in his uncertainty. "I'm sorry, but that is incorrect." Looking at the last contestant, Miss Nettie asked her to spell the same word. Soldier, she spelled. "That is correct," Miss Nettie announced. "Congratulations, Margaret Elkins. You are the 6th grade winner." The children all clapped and shouted, "Yay, Margaret!" Miss Nettie then named Benjamin as the runner-up and shook his hand vigorously. "I am very proud of you. I'm just glad it's over with." "Good job, Benjy. Good job," Sarah said. His schoolmates jumped and cheered as Benjy's parents gave him a big old hug. Old Albert gave him a pat on the back and shook his hand with a hearty grip. Oh boy, Benjy's cheeks flamed as he knew that they must be crimson red. "Let's go find a spot for our picnic." Sarah led him out to the soft grassy area under the birch tree. "You did a great job." "But I lost," Benjy hung his head. "You did your best, and I'm proud to share my picnic lunch with you." Hearing Sarah's words, he realized the grasshoppers had finally stopped, and his belly had now called for food. He gobbled down every morsel of his basket and a few cookies that Sarah offered him. "Thank you." Benjy remembered his manners. The afternoon passed quickly as the adults also enjoyed a picnic lunch, while the students eagerly joined in sack races, three-legged races, and wheelbarrow races. All too soon, the Landisburg students found themselves waving goodbye to their visitors. As the rest of the students left for home, Miss Nettie cornered Benjy. "Benjy, could I see you inside for a minute?" What could I possibly have done wrong this time? Benjy looked around. All the other children were gone. He found himself alone in the room with Miss Nettie. Miss Nettie announced, "I have a special prize for you as our runner-up in the spelling bee." "Oh, it wasn't nothing special, Miss Nettie. I didn't even win." Still, he watched intently as Miss Nettie opened her closet door. When she turned around to face him, Benjy's mouth dropped open. It couldn't be, yet there was no mistaking that hideous black hat. "But how did you get the Belsnickle's hat, Miss Nettie?" 1,000 questions raced through his head, with only one conclusion. Miss Nettie had been the Belsnickle all along. "Benjy!" Miss Nettie's voice startled him back to reality. "Yes, Miss Nettie?" The bells jingled and the porcupine quills wiggled as she placed the hat on his head. Miss Nettie gave Benjy the warmest smile she had ever sent his way. "You have yourself a wonderful summer, Benjy." The bells jingled as Benjy turned and ran down the porch steps. "I'll wear this hat proudly," he thought. "I sure earned it with the lesson that I learned." And that is the end of Benjy and the Belsnickle by Bonnie Swanhart. I can't believe I made it through. But it was cute. I enjoyed it. I hope the few people in here, I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope your kids had a nice Christmas time bedtime story. I'm I do have some more things I'm going to be doing here in the future concerning the Belsnickle and other traditions of Pennsylvania Dutch. Putting that stuff together right now. That was a story? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't believe I still have a voice, actually. I thought for sure my voice was going to give out a few times. So yeah, I'm planning a few things going forward with some more Pennsylvania Dutch culture traditions and characters, folk heroes and characters and stuff like Elspigel. I'm also putting together a course right now on ancestral veneration, which hopefully will be better. Look, I can't talk now. We'll be ready to go shortly after New Year's. Hopefully that will be ready and open for enrollment. Was wondering, do you have time to do a reading and how much? I've been fully booked up with readings since October, and I don't foresee any openings in the future. In the near future. Like, it might be summer until I have reading openings, because when I do readings, a lot of times there's work involved, and then sometimes that work takes a lot of work, and it's a few weeks, maybe a month of doing the work that goes with this client. So I'm really booked up. I got a lot of work on my plate, a lot of readings I got to get through, so it might be till next summer. If you really need a reading, you can message me on my Facebook page, Primitive Roots Appalachian Conjure, and I can give you a referral to an excellent reader. He's the one that I go to when I personally need readings. That's who I have been referring people to when they have been asking me to give readings. I'm sending them over to the guy that I get readings from, who is an excellent reader. He's an Alosha priest, crowned Oshun. He's a great guy, really good at reading. So if you really need a reading, hit me up on Facebook and I can give you a referral to that guy. I hope everybody enjoyed. I really got to go to the bathroom. I didn't take a break and I drank a lot. So everybody have a wonderful Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the Christmas time story tradition. Maybe we'll do this every year. So everybody have a wonderful holiday, a wonderful new year. I pray that your new year what's the word I'm looking for? Prolapses the blessings of the one previous. I hope your new one is better than the last, basically. So everybody have a great night. Do you take Canada transfer? Actually, my friend that I am referring people to is in Canada. So that should be really easy for you. So hit me up on Facebook and I will refer you to him. I will give you his information to set up a booking with him. So everybody have a wonderful holiday. Everybody have a blessed new year. May your blessings outnumber the ones that you had this year. And everybody stay blessed. Have a wonderful holiday and good night. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Happy holiday, happy Kwanzaa, happy Yule, happy whatever, happy Hanukkah, happy whatever holiday you celebrate this time of year. I hope it's wonderful, and I hope everyone stays blessed, and I cannot figure how to end this fucking thing. This is my first live event that I scheduled, and I don't know how to stop it. How do I turn it off? Okay, everybody be blessed.